Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Placerville City Council's meeting of March 26th. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. And before we begin this evening, I'd like to make a little announcement. This meeting is dedicated in honor of CAL FIRE pilot Joe Hoser Satrapa, who passed on March 17th, 2019, who is a resident of Grass Valley. Hoser, as he was affectionately known, flew Air Tanker 89 out of the Grass Valley Air Tanker Base from 1992 to the year 2016. When he took himself out of service because, to quote him, he felt that he had slowed down a quarter of a second and he wouldn't want to risk anybody's life on the ground. Anybody that has listened to a radio in this county in the last 25 years would have recognized his gravelly voice and his distinctive aggressive fire tactics. He was not only a legend locally and as a CAL FIRE pilot, but he was also a 29-year veteran from the Navy, and he was one of the original 4 pilots that developed the Top Gun program for the United States Navy. So Hoser, he took very good care of us for all those years in the air. He kept many a firefighter safe, and I'm sure he saved many a life and reduced property damage. And as the saying says in the Navy, fair winds and following seas, sir. So we salute him and his many years of dedication and send our condolences to his family. So with that, I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mayor Acuna?
Here.
Councilmember Borelli? Here. Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Here.
Councilmember Taylor?
Here.
Councilmember Thomas?
Here.
Thank you very much. Moving on to announcements, presentations to the public, brief comments by city council members. Vice Mayor Zaragoza.
Just had a good, prior to SACOG meeting, what we're kind of doing now is just doing these informal get-togethers with a portion of the members of the board. So we had people from Placer County, from Sacramento, from YOLO, just to get together and talk about issues, kind of best practices. And it was really good, I thought, helpful for me and just getting to know some of our colleagues from different cities and counties a little bit better, as well as sharing some best practices and issues going on. So just wanted to report that out.
Well, thank you very much. Councilmember Taylor?
Well, with all of my colleagues here and with the city staff, I attended the budget goal setting workshop last week. And I also met with Chief Ortega and we discussed sexual assault statistics as a follow-up to the police report a couple weeks ago. That's it.
I appreciate that. Councilmember Borelli.
Yes, I attended an AmGen meeting, and then I attended the El Dorado County Fire Safe Council meeting. It was so informative. There's so much on there that I couldn't begin to report all this stuff. But it was really, they are just so active, and they followed it up. Well, we had a great program presentation by Heather Hamilton, who's part of the Pollock Pines Fire Council, and she did a great program on wildfire home protection, which our council is going to try and get for it. And then they also had a second meeting for they called it New Council Orientation, and our newly established Placerville Fire Council attended that. And then I had one more thing to add. And then I went to our local Placerville Fire Protection council meeting, and that was well attended. They're really getting organized, don't have too much more to do. And then there's it's called Sierra Renaissance Society, and they're going to do a fire-wise landscape defensible space to protect against wildfires. And it's going to be down in Cameron Park, but they're going to have presentations from a master gardener. They're going to have CAL FIRE Chief Deputy Director Mark Stanley, along with retired CAL FIRE Assistant Chief Chris Parker, and one of our past council persons, local insurance specialist Carl Hagan, and explain how they balance safety and aesthetics with the law and insurance requirements to increase the chances your property and home can withstand a wildfire. So it's going to be a great program, I think. So anyway, I've just been lots of fire issues.
Thank you, Patty.
That's what I've been doing.
Councilmember Thomas.
All right. I attended the Placerville Fire Safe Council, and I truly appreciate the amount of effort that all of them are putting in to develop a fire safe plan for our community. It is significant. It's a lot of work, and we're gonna benefit greatly from that. So I really do appreciate that. And then I had the opportunity to tour our water reclamation facility, and I have to tell you, I was truly fascinated by how that whole system works. And you see what's coming in the pipe from everybody's sewers, and then you see what's going into the creek, and it's drinkable, though we did not test it. And everything that happens in between there is just truly fascinating. If you're into biology and all that kind of things, those guys are very proud and should be of what they do out there and the work that they put in and the energy and time. And they are truly dedicated to what they do. And you can tell by the energy and excitement they have when they're just discussing how the process works and what they do there. So that's it for me. Thank you.
And wait till we get our solar farm out there.
Yes.
Well, thank you all the council members for all your interesting reports. I would just comment on the staff workshop that we had last week and thank all the department heads for their effort. It was a long day, but I think it was very productive, very beneficial to have a public setting like that, where we could have an open discussion amongst all the council members, and especially with our new council members, so that they can understand the diverse challenges that every one of our departments faces. So I know it went longer, but we certainly appreciated all of you staying here until 5:30 on a Friday, which some of you that was supposed to have been your day off anyway. So it was really time well spent. So thank you again for your efforts. Moving on to item 3.2, Caltrans update. We do have an update, and since this project is about to go live, I'm going to ask City Manager Morris to help me with the presentation from this point out. Caltrans did go ahead and decide to take a weather delay on the project, so they will not be beginning it on April the 1st. Their new start date is April 15th, which maybe appropriately is tax day also. Cleve, would you like to give an update on it's still a 12-day project, still 24 hours a day, beginning on April 15th.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, we've had 2 meetings with Caltrans, and those meetings have tried to bring in all of the stakeholders that would be affected or be involved with that. So it included all the fire agencies. Our local fire district, Chief Hogan, has attended that, as well as CAL FIRE. We also had the Transit Authority, El Dorado Transportation Commission Director Woodrow Deloria was there. CHP, of course, our Public Works and Engineering departments attended. So we had a good group of people there to make sure that we were trying to cover all of our bases. The schools also, school buses for their point of view from that. So we think we've done everything that we can to try to avoid the worst, but the fact is there are going to be delays. They're projecting, if you've seen the flyer that is out on it, they're projecting a 45-minute delay during the week, as much as a 45-minute delay, and longer on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, especially probably Friday nights and Sunday nights, depending on which direction you're going. So we do expect there will be some delays. We're concerned about how people might try to get off and go around it by going through the city, which will cause backups in the city. Our police department is fully on board with that, understands it, and will be ready to respond as necessary. Caltrans is also looking at ways that if that becomes an issue, we can look at closing down additional off-ramps to the east of us if we're going westbound, so that people aren't getting off and trying to go around that. So we've tried to put together everything that we can to make it run as smoothly as possible. It's going to be 12 days when it's going to be rough, is the way I would put it, and we'll have to deal with it the best we can. It is absolutely a project that needs to get done. It's part of Caltrans process and projects they're doing on Highway 50 to shore up these bridges and make them safe for the loads that they carry throughout the day. So I think that's it, Mayor. Have I missed anything that you'd like to add to that?
No, I certainly appreciate your help with this, Cleve. And again, this is a Caltrans project, but we know that it's very important to the city, and that's why I've been giving some reports. And I've asked Cleve to start helping now that we're actually approaching the launch date on this. The good thing about the current schedule, or excuse me, the revised schedule, is the first week is spring break week. So all of our schools will be closed, and that should give everybody a chance to get a feel for what these delays are truly going to be. They are going to need, all the parents and school organizations are going to have to time their schedule, though, because it'll still be, this restriction will still be in place when school goes back in the following week. So there is a little bit of hope there that we can get some practice in with the reduced traffic volumes, and we do have several schools in town, so that is going to aid us. And I just wanted to thank Cleve and our police chief and our fire chief for their involvement in this, and also Caltrans assurance that they will provide us with an almost immediate response if we do find one of these situations where, despite their best planning, the traffic somehow overwhelms the situation. If we need help, there will be one number and one person to contact. So the bureaucracy should be derailed during the 12 days. This is a 12-day event. In the fire districts and all of their response plans are all scoped around making sure that they can safely get where they need to get. So, Councilmember Taylor, did you have a
Yeah, quick question. Is that 45 minutes just during peak travel time, or is that?
You know what, they said during the weekdays. I'm sure obviously in the middle of the night it's not going to
it's
be a
going to
problem.
vary.
But could be, you know, especially mornings and evenings, you could see that 45-minute delay.
Okay.
Is this a 24/7?
Yes, it will be 24/7. And no, they've been doing these bridges. They did Schnell School Road and they did Smith Flat Overcrossing. But same thing, but they had month-long lane closures, but they had enough room, so they just shifted the lanes over. Everybody thinks back, you can still see where they shifted the lanes. Unfortunately, there's no space in this one. So we will get through this. Again, it starts on April the 15th. Right.
Just to clarify, I know there's some misinformation that has gone out on this about what it really is. It is not a road closure. It is one lane closure. There
each
will
direction.
be one lane open at all times in both directions going through. So.
Thank you, Cleve. Any other questions on that? All right, moving on then to item 3.3, which is the introduction of Chief Lloyd Ogun, El Dorado County Fire District. Chief, if we could invite you to the podium, sir. City Manager, did you have a...
I didn't really prepare a biography for Chief. I've met with him several times. He's doing a great job, and we enjoy working with a good relationship already, and we appreciate the opportunity to work with Chief Ogun. I know he's retired from Sac City Fire, correct, Chief? Right. And is up here and will be the chief for the district, I believe, for approximately a year, correct? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we'll go from there and see what happens.
Yeah.
So anything like that, Chief? Thank you.
Well, thank you, City Manager. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm excited to be here, so thank you for the invitation. Just a little bit about my background. I've lived in this county for 40 years. Mostly in the Pleasant Valley, Pollock Pines area, but I did my wife and I lived in Placerville for 7 years up off of Ridge Court, if any of you know where that's at, up off of Washington Street. But I spent 33 years in the Sacramento Fire Department. The last 9 of those years I was the Deputy Fire Chief in Sacramento. And I retired in 2015 and thought that part of my career was behind me until I got a phone call in the middle of January with a question, hey, what are you doing? And so the question was what are you doing, and would you like to consider being our fire chief for an interim over potentially up to a year? So the agreement that we have right now is that I will be the fire chief, the interim fire chief, for a year while we go through the process of recruiting a new fire chief for the El Dorado County Fire Protection District and help them through a couple fairly heavy lift items that they have. So I think that's a couple pieces of good news, is that we are working very diligently with the other fire departments in the area and talking about some consolidations that might make sense. And so I think you're going to begin to see some discussion, maybe get a little bit more public here really soon about some of those efforts that's going on. And I think that'll be a good thing for our community as we work through that. Couple other just quick pieces of news. Good news for the city of Placerville. We've been going through our budget. We've been working on what can we do with some of the surpluses that we've been able to create by controlling some of our costs. We've gone through a really good process of doing that over the last 5 or 6 years. And as of this Monday morning, we just increased Station 25 staffing back to 3-person staffing. So that is good news, I think, for the district, for the city of Placerville. Gives us a lot more ability to manage our ambulance there on a better service delivery model. So we're excited about that new addition. We're just about ready to make couple of additional increases in service. We're going to stand down our squad at Station 21, and we're going to bring an engine back up at Station 21 in Camino. So that's another good service delivery enhancement that we're going to make over the next few months. So we're excited about where we're headed. I think we got a lot of heavy work ahead of us. And I was telling Chief Ortega tonight, I feel like I've been drinking out of the fire hose for the last 5 weeks, but it's all been good, and I'm looking forward to just keeping our nose to the wheel for the next year and seeing what we can accomplish as we move forward. So thank you very much for the opportunity to come tonight, and we look forward to working with Placerville. I have to say, I worked with the city of Sacramento for a long time, and in just the staff meetings I've been in here already, this environment is, I have to tell you, you guys have a really good environment here in the city of Placerville. So thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you very much, Chief, and welcome to Placerville. We look forward to working with you. And we know it'll be a process for the recruitments to go on for the formal replacement for Chief Hardy. Yeah. We certainly recognize his service and the quality that he built, the legacy that he left behind. So it's great to hear that you're able to make the increase on staffing at Station 25. What will be the staffing for Station 21 once you put an engine back there?
So it'll start out as 2-person staffing, but we actually have a model in place. So I'm working with our board on a couple more 3-person staffing models. So I think as we head forward into the new fiscal year, you're going to see a couple of announcements come pretty quickly on increasing staffing throughout the district.
Well, that's great news. Yeah. We'll make sure you get all the credit for it. This will be your little legacy from the time you got here.
We got a great staff up there, and they're doing a great job, so thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Comments from the council? All right. Thank you very much on that one. Moving on to item 3.4, we have a presentation about to begin from Greg Chu. Good evening, Greg. Greg is going to be giving us an update on Cycle 6 housing, 2021, and the 2029 Regional Housing Needs Allocation. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me here. As a person who spent my whole career working in communities and trying to make better places, I always love coming to Placerville. You guys have an amazing city and really have a sense of community here. And every time I come back, it seems like there's always something new going on. So I think Vice Mayor Zaragoza is going to learn that Placerville is kind of the envy of many parts of the region. So I think he's going to hear that as long as he serves on the SACOG board. So thank you for having me. What I'm here to talk to you tonight is about what's called the Regional Housing Needs Allocation Process, or RHNA. It's the word for it is RENA, not arena, but RENA. And in one sentence, it is the state mandate for the determination for how many housing units each city in the SACOG region is allocated and must zone for during an 8-year period of time. So. In short, it is a state law that's been in effect since the 70s, and basically throughout the state, the state law is to make sure that there are enough housing units for all Californians of all income categories. So the process starts by basically the SACOG region And for just the audience, if you're not familiar with SACOG, SACOG serves as the regional transportation planning agency for 6 counties, including El Dorado County, plus Placer County, Sutter, Yuba, Sacramento, and Yolo counties. We work in tandem with the El Dorado County Transportation Commission, and we serve 22 cities and 6 counties in those in the SACOG region. So one of our main goals is transportation planning, and we put together a transportation plan for the whole region and working with each jurisdiction. So the state, since the RENA law was adopted in the 70s, basically the state determines or makes a projection on how much growth this 6-county region is going to have during an 8-year period of time. So the 8-year period of time in this case that's coming up is from 2021 to 2029. And we receive that allocation. The state tries to figure out, based on birth rates, death rates, job growth, a number of factors, what they believe is going to happen to this region. From the state standpoint, they're trying to figure out from the tax standpoint how much revenue they're going to bring in. So that's done by the Department of Finance. They hand that number to us as a region, and we do our own projection, but we do it for transportation purposes. We do our Metropolitan Transportation Plan we update it every 4 years. That's the plan to figure out kind of where growth is happening, when it's going to happen, so forth, and we try to match transportation resources to go to make sure it is goes with what we think is going to happen. Our projections, though, are from 2016 to 2040, which is a much bigger period of time than the 8-year period of time that the state provides for us. Once we get the 8-year period of time, the allocation for the entire region, the most important thing that SACOG and the SACOG board ultimately takes an action on is the formula to divvy up that total number into the jurisdictions. So all 22 cities and 6 counties will receive an allocation from SACOG based on what that formula is. And just a caveat, even though SACOG does not serve the Tahoe region, including the parts of El Dorado and Placer counties that are considered the Tahoe region, for the purposes of the regional housing needs allocation, we are required to do that. So that all said, we receive this number and then we create a formula, and there's a number of state mandates that we have to factor into this formula. The SACOG board accepts one of the methods for the formula, and then each jurisdiction receives its overall number. But the overall number is only part of the equation. In addition to the total number, the state gives us that total number is broken up into 4 income categories. So as the state gives us 4 income categories, we have to divvy that up to the jurisdictions. So what are the 4 income categories? It's all dependent on median family income. So for median family income for El Dorado County is, I believe, somewhere approaching $80,000 for a family of 4. So the first income category, the lowest income category, is 50% of the median family income. And that's called the very low income category. There's so 50%, which would be about $40,000, is one category. Between 50 and 80% is the second income category, and that's called the low income category. The next 2 are from 80 to 120%. That's the moderate income category, and then above 120% of median family incomes above moderate. Where that really matters, and what all jurisdictions are most interested in, is the lower 2 income categories, what we call the low and very low. We combine to call those the affordable housing income categories. So that's collectively that's 80% of median family income or less. You receive an allocation again for all four categories, but for the lower 2, the number that you get for that is the amount of housing units that you have to zone in the high density or deed restricted categories. So what I mean by deed restricted is if you have land, somebody wants to develop and housing for and is agreeing to keep it for low-income housing and put it in their deed restriction and keep it that way for 30 or more years. That's what we call deed restricted. But for the majority of the affordable housing is the higher density zoning. So that is mostly going to be multifamily, and that's zoned enough for normally it's 20 to 30 units an acre, depending on the size of the jurisdiction and a bunch of other factors. But the default is for smaller jurisdictions is 20, and that's how much you have to zone enough land within your housing element to accommodate for all that. So I realize I'd thrown a lot of numbers at you, but the bottom line is you get a number as for this 8-year period of time, and for particularly the total number of units that you have to zone for enough housing. And I want to clarify, this is not how much you have to build as a city, but how much you have to have zoned. The intent of the law is that the one thing that local jurisdictions have, is the power of zoning and planning. And as long as you're doing your part as a city to zone enough land, and specifically in the low income categories, the affordable housing income categories, zone enough high density land. So during that 8-year period of time, you'll update your housing element to show the different potential sites that could be zoned for that, and then HCD, the state's Housing and Community Development Department, will review that, and then during that time, you'll have to zone enough land that meets those categories. So that's it in a nutshell. That's the RENA process. You'll receive it, and then your jurisdiction will talk about where in your housing element, how you would be able to accommodate that. Just from a process standpoint, we're right in the heart of the season. This only happens every 8 years. So the SACOG board has been debriefed that it's coming. We are right now working with housing planners such as Pierre and Andrew from the city staff, as well as all their colleagues from around the region. We're meeting once a month talking about what that formula is going to be. And we're creating a number of different formulas for which the SACOG board will get an opportunity to choose from. So we will be, in terms of timeline process, we will be working for the next few months with all the housing planners. We'll remind the SACOG board in June that this is happening. In August, they'll receive the menu of different ideas, one of which will be a recommendation by the SACOG staff for that formula. And with that formula comes all the numbers that go with it. For all the methods that we bring to the SACOG board of options that they can choose from, they'll see the numbers that go with that. There'll be one of those that the SACOG board will make a recommendation on in August. There will be a 60-day comment period from August to October, with all the methods released to the public for public comment, with one of them being recommended. And then in October, the SACOG board will decide which of those methods to choose from. And then once they approve the method, then they'll approve also the numbers that go with that. So lots going on. And the SACOG board will be kept apprised of the developments on not only just developing methodology, but also, more importantly, just when we're trying to accommodate enough housing, as we are trying throughout this region and throughout the state, what are different strategies that jurisdictions are using? How are they finding ways to make housing affordable? What are some best practices? So we have a number of workshops that you as the Placerville elected officials or staff can participate in. We have some bus tours on affordable housing that we're planning for. We're also having workshops on what we call infill development math. What's just the numbers behind doing infill development in places? When can you tell whether or not a project pencils or not, or when you can entice a developer to do an infill project? When are the basic numbers good enough for somebody to really consider that? We'll also be doing workshops, and all this stuff will pass. Pierre has all the dates and information on these different workshops. We'll also have another thing called the missing middle. That's a term that has come up recently by an architect. He's noticed that some of our very traditional older neighborhoods from the 20s and 30s and 40s before the Second World War had beautiful apartments and garden apartments, cottages, accessory dwelling units, carriage houses, things like that, things that are considered multifamily. But over time, we as the planning profession have outzoned those, and we don't allow those. And yet, those are things that are charming and people like to live in, and they fit into single-family residential areas. So there's a movement now to bring those sorts of housing options back. So again, we'll have a workshop on that for all local governments to participate in if you're interested in hearing about that. So. Again, basically, the SACOG board will take an action later this year on this, and you'll receive your number at that point. And the last thing is, so the state also recognizes, we're in a housing crunch. We've been in a housing crisis for a long time statewide, and they're the state's trying to find ways to provide resources to all local governments. So they do have monies from the Senate Bill 2 funds. That's the, you pay $75 per real estate transaction. That was in Senate Bill 2 that passed a couple years ago. Those monies are going specifically earmarked for housing, and a slice of that is going to local governments. So the city will receive about $150,000-ish could be updating its zoning codes, regulatory issues, it could be doing for planning, or a whole number of issues that, a whole number of activities that could relate to helping the city find ways to provide more housing and particularly more affordable housing. So with that, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Well, thank you very much, Greg. We certainly appreciate you coming up to Placerville this evening. And I would be remiss if I didn't recognize that our Development Services Director, Mr. Rivas, is paramount in this effort to make sure that we are currently in compliance, and we will be in compliance with whatever these future numbers are. I didn't want to overlook his role in this, as I was anxious to get you introduced so that you could present this information. Is there any questions from the council to Mr. Chu on this? It's pretty straightforward. Mr. Rivas, did you have anything that you would like to add?
At this point, I don't have anything to add to Mr. Chu's presentation, but staff would like to thank Greg Chu for coming up to talk with the council and sort of we talked about this, that it was a good idea to bring the council and the planning commission for that matter. Greg Chu did give the same presentation to our planning commission, since they would also be involved in the whole housing element update coming up and the cycle 6 and the RENA number review. So it's been a pleasure working with Mr. Chu and his staff and at SACOG. So we just want to thank him for coming up and giving this presentation and keeping us all up to speed on this process. It's a long process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierre. And as appropriate, Greg, as this process moves forward this year, if you feel that it would be time-worthy to come up and give us an update, we would certainly welcome that. Just for the layperson, I'll see if I can try and describe what in the world it is we're talking about. It is extremely important. It does have significant impacts to all cities and counties in the state of California. We are all required to do our best to provide opportunities for a full range of housing from top to bottom. If these numbers are not properly prepared, those expectations can then become skewed. We in the city had a direct issue so 3 years ago, when our housing numbers, and I'll give an example that the audience can understand, these same numbers that we're discussing this evening, 8 or 16 years ago, probably 8 years ago now, 10 years ago, the numbers came out that in 2015, something like that, the city of Placerville would have over 20,000 residents. Well, we have a little over 10,000 residents. So you can see that if these numbers and those 20,000, that was something that had compounded itself. So of course, the expectation for the number of houses that we're supposed to build was for a 20,000 citizen community. Well, that wasn't the reality. So fortunately, we were able to get that all amended and get it corrected. We are now in compliance, and I'm confident that at the end of this current cycle, that these new numbers will have more realistic population expectations, and therefore we will have more reasonable and livable housing expectation numbers. By being in compliance, we also avoid the ire of the current new governor, who seems to be focused on making housing first in California by using a variety of methods as penalties. So it's important for us to remain in compliance for a number of reasons. So again, thank you very much, Pierre, and Mr. Chu, thank you for your time again this evening.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you in the future.
Okay.
Pierre, did you have anything else that you would like to add before we move on?
I would just follow up that the city's housing element is currently in full compliance with state planning law, the housing law. So, and we intend to stay that way. You probably recall when staff developed what we call the housing opportunity overlay, which worked very well for smaller jurisdictions such as ours, because it allows a property owner then to either build or construct in accordance with the underlying base zone district, or if we have the opportunity for a developer to come in and do an affordable housing project, then they can also avail themselves to the housing opportunity overlay. So we intend on using that again for this current update.
Thank you, Pierre. And again, I would stress that we zone it. We don't build it. We just zone it. So that's two big differences there. All right, moving on to item 4, closed session report. Mr. Driscoll, do we have anything to report this evening?
We do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Tonight in closed session, the council considered the claim of Jessica Peterson, Haven Douglas, Cruz Douglas, and Lola Peterson. It was one claim. All members of the council were present, and they unanimously voted to reject that claim.
Thank you very much, sir. Adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion for adoption?
Move for adoption.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. The agenda is adopted. Before I go on to ceremonial matters, I'd like to welcome District 3 Supervisor Brian Veerkamp to the audience. Good to see you this evening. I know you have a lot of late meetings. Thank you for coming to ours. Moving on to item 6, ceremonial matters. A proclamation for National Telecommunicators Week. I believe this really comes home. We've lost our temporary fire chief, but we have our police chief here this evening. And this proclamation deals with a very important job that the city does have several employees performing. I'll go ahead and try and read this rather quickly. Proclamation of the City Council of the City of Placerville declaring the week of April 14th through 20th, 2019 as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services, and whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property, and whereas the safety of our first responders is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone in to the Placerville Police Department Communication Center, and whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services. And whereas the public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link for our police officers by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them with information, and ensuring their safety. And whereas each dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in the past year. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of Placerville declares the week of April 14th through 20th, 2019 as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in Placerville in honor of the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and our citizens safe. Signed by myself. Thank you, Chief, and please, I have a proclamation, and I'm sure that someone at your department will want a picture of us.
Okay, that means I have to stand up and get my picture taken. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council. So this is a week that comes up every week. It's a national event across the United States where we just take time to recognize the importance of our dispatchers. We commonly call them dispatchers who answer our 911 lines. And for the city of Placerville, we're the first point of contact. So if you dial 911 from your cell or your hardline phone, 90% of the time it will go to us. It will go to our communication center or public safety answering point. And then we determine right away whether it is a fire, medical, or a law enforcement issue and transfer it to the appropriate agency. CHP answers the phones along Highway 50 and through most of the interstate highways throughout California, and they can transfer very quickly. We pride ourselves on keeping our answer times very short. We answer more than 95% of our calls in less than 10 seconds, both emergency and non-emergency. Very few agencies in California can say that, and we're tracked by the state of California Public Safety 911 office at OES, who watches our times, and if you do fall below your time limit, they will give you a call or a visit and maybe even audit your agency. We are nowhere near that. And as you said in the proclamation, Mr. Mayor, the dispatchers provide timely intelligence and officer safety details, and many times, as you can imagine, they have to get this information from people that are in crisis. And so they do a great job. We could not do our jobs on the street without those dispatchers, and we often call them our first responders. So thank you for that proclamation and for your time to read it.
Well, thank you very much, Chief, for the additional information, and thank the dispatchers because they are a part of every shift. They know where the officers are. They know who's on duty. They know who's been away from the radio for too long. They are almost like another trained officer, just observing blindly from an office just with the radio communications and cell phone. So, as well as answering the 911 calls. Tremendously stressful, but also a tremendously rewarding job that intricate in keeping all of our city and our employees safe. So we appreciate them very much. All right, we will move on to item 7, public comment. We'll begin first with the written communication. Mr. Morris, do we have any written communication for the council this evening?
You do, Mayor and Council. You had one piece of communication that was received prior to the agenda being sent out from Dorothy Wilson regarding the parklet, and I think all of you have received that. There was also another piece of communication received after the agenda was posted from Tom Compton, also regarding the parklet. And then 2 other pieces of information that are related to the item 12.1, the vegetation management ordinance, one from Sue Rodman, who's in the audience tonight, and one from Tom Compton.
All right. Point of order, Mr. Morris. Mr. Compston's requested that his letter be read out loud if appropriate. What would be,
You're welcome to do that if you'd like, Mayor.
Okay. Well, since that doesn't occur very often, I will go ahead and read that then, and this would be the appropriate time to proceed with written. So it is a letter dated March 22nd, 2019 to the mayor and city council members regarding the Main Street parklet. Dear Mayor Acuna and council members, because I cannot appear at the March 26th meeting, I am writing to share my experience with the new Main Street parklet. Please read this letter aloud during public comment if appropriate. Last Tuesday, when I went to Main Street at lunchtime, I parked easily in the city lot and walked to Timmy's Brown Bag for a sandwich. I took my sandwich and a Coke out to the parklet as other customers left and sat down facing the sidewalk. From my perch, I could see and hear everything. Eye contact with pedestrians was easy and natural. I greeted or chatted amiably with everyone walking by. Most people wanted to talk about the parklet. Those expressing an opinion called it an amenity. Several took pictures. I ate, observing passing vehicles and bikes, and soaked up Main Street's ambience. As I finished my meal, another couple sat down. We introduced ourselves, and I struck up a brief conversation before I disposed of my trash and recycling. Heading back to my car, I heard them greet some friends who happened to pass by on their way to lunch at Amaro. The parklet has attractive and clean. I encountered no vagrants. I felt protected from passing cars. The parklet turned a routine lunch hour into a relaxed, impromptu street party. I would recommend spending an idle hour there to anyone who loves Placerville. Signed, Tom Compton. All right. So now I will move on to item 7.2, oral communication. This is the portion of the meeting of anyone that wishes to address the City Council on a non-agendized item is welcome to do so. We do ask that you keep your remarks respectful, limit your comments to 3 minutes, and also limit your subject matter to items that are pertinent to the business of the City Council. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address the council on a non-agendized item?
Hi, Mayor and Council. Sue Rodman, resident of Placerville. I have to agree with Dorothy Wilson. The downtown crosswalks are not visible after dark, especially on rainy nights. They look really nice in the daylight, but at night they disappear. They're too close in color intensity to the asphalt, and the lighted bollards are not bright enough to light the entire crosswalk. While pedestrians are visible when standing next to the bollards, they blend into the night as soon as they go into the street, especially when they're in dark clothing. Dorothy's ideas of white outlines would be a good safety upgrade. They won't look as pretty, but I think it needs to be safe to cross at night and in the rain. I like our Main Street, and I like the parklet. Another safety issue that I'd like to bring to the council's attention is parking on the east side of Clay Street under the freeway underpass. Allowing people to park along Clay Street in the shadow of the Highway 50 overpass creates an unsafe sight distance for anyone coming from Main Street or going to Main Street on Clay Street. You cannot see around the parked cars to watch out for oncoming traffic, and it's a problem for pedestrians, bicycles, and drivers. It is bad enough that Clay Street becomes one lane at the bridge without having sight distance compromised by cars parked under that overpass. That curb needs to be painted red with parking prohibited. Please pay attention to these safety issues before someone is killed.
Thank you for your comments, Sue. Anyone else wishing to address the council on a matter not on this evening's agenda? Please come forward and state your name for the record.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I think that regarding the parking lot, I noticed today at the parklet that there is a bicycle ramp on the east side, so that's going to take up an extra parking space. I assume that somebody can correct that and put it on the other side so it won't interfere with 2 parking spaces being taken. I wanted to mention and commend the El Dorado County Health Department that came here last year about this time at this very location, announced a plan to educate the public about the perils and dangers of skin cancer. It's a very serious subject. I think all of you know, we've all heard of cases like Maureen Reagan, who died of melanoma. I know I've known of 3 people in my life who did. And if you see the blemishes on my face, it's from, and they substantially subsided over last week when they were removed from liquid nitrogen. It's keratosis. Tomorrow I get a treatment, it's the 3rd time, where you get chemicals on your face and you put under ultraviolet light to get rid of the other keratosis, which is not very conspicuous. It's like a friend of mine who I grew up with, a neighbor. So we've known each other as children. That would go back more than half a century. And she lost half her nose, a substantial portion of her nose from that. It's so insidious, you literally can't see at the front of your nose. I wouldn't have noticed some of these up here because they're not visible, you feel them. So I just think it's really odd that the health department would announce this big campaign and yet have a parklet which is out and encourages people to be in the sun for a long time. So I hope that the solar panel that's been added today will eventually have a canopy added so it covers more protection. And when there was an offer to have sunblock distributed, I contacted a couple, so I'll get these small containers to distribute. When I'm able to get out in the sun after tomorrow, which will be by next week, I'll put together a brochure I'll be glad to hand out, consistent with what they want to do from the American Cancer Society, warning people about the dangers of being out there. When we tell kids about going to the pool and putting on the lotion, you have to have it on the sunblock about a half hour before, so the skin absorbs it, and then you have to repeat it every various times, or it's not going to be effective. But I think that's something to take into account. And likewise, when I heard about the safety, when you're going in there, whether it's the night or the day, given the geography we have, late in the afternoon as it gets warmer, you're going to get sun blindness from having the sun strike you straight in the face from the west, just as someone would come out behind that parklet. So I hope that can be addressed by, lights flashing or something like that, since the large numbers of children are killed every year from accidents. It's the leading cause is automobiles. So that's something that I'm sure you'll address in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Appreciate your comments. Any other member of the public wishing to address the council on a non-agendized item? Seeing no one else approaching the podium, I would like to get a clarification from city staff in regards to a potential other, the bike rack causing a conflict and loss of parking. Is this either the chief or Mr. Rivas?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Yeah, staff is working with the county. We're going to have that bike rack then relocated because it is encumbering an additional parking stall.
Oh, very good. So we hope to get that done. Looking at our public works director. You can move it.
It's not permanent. It can
Consider it moved. There's that. Took care of that. And skin cancer is a very serious issue. I lost a very dear friend many years ago to it. Very quickly, worked 40 years and had 1 year of retirement, most of which was spent dealing with skin cancer. So we should all be very aware of that no matter where we are. Moving on to item 8, the consent calendar. All items will be considered under one motion unless a member of the council wishes to have an item pulled. Is there any items that we wish to have pulled?
I don't wish to pull an item, but I wish to comment on it.
All right, very good.
And it's about the appointments to our various committees. And I just want to express my appreciation to a whole list of people who either re-upped or actually took on one of them. I can go through, I highlighted several names: Mickey Kaiserman, Kevin Brown, Debbie Miller. My brother David Thomas stepped up for the Peak Committee. Tom Cumpston, Elizabeth Zangari, Andrew Matthews, Jackie No, all on various committees. A lot of those people chose to step back up to the plate and take another term of 4 years. 4 years?
Yeah.
4 years. So
they're,
these are people committed to our community, and I didn't want to let it to pass on the consent calendar, at least to recognize their efforts and their participation in supporting our city. And you don't only see them here at these meetings, they have other meetings, but it often reports back, and I truly do appreciate their support in that manner. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Thomas. Your words are very well spoken. Is there any other comments by council? I'm going to ask if there's any member of the public that wishes to comment on an item on this evening's consent calendar.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Sue Rodman, current Measure H&L Chairperson. And I would like to comment on 8.4, particularly the Measure H&L Sales Tax Committee. It's comprised of 6 members, 5 voting members and 1 alternate. 1 business representative has been vacant for over 2 years due to the lack of applicants. Incumbents Tom Cumpston and Elizabeth Zangari reapplied to continue to serve on the committee when their terms expire this year. And currently, Gary Sylvie is our alternate representative who has attended meetings faithfully, even though he's an alternate and doesn't get to vote unless someone else is absent. Neither Measure H nor L require the committee members to be either business or resident members. And that's been set up by the City Council, so it could be changed by the City Council. Discussion in our committee with city staff is to review the resolution establishing the committee and consider changing the makeup to require either residency or business ownership in Placerville without designation of the number of residents or business owners. And this would allow us a little more flexibility in recruiting members, and perhaps we could get our membership filled in. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Sue. Is there any other member of the public wishing to comment on consent calendar? Seeing no one approaching the podium, I'll bring it back to the council. That brings up a very good point. We may not want to undertake it tonight, but maybe we want to undertake it soon, and that is to look at the position of a faithfully serving alternate, and there's still a vacancy. What would be would we want to agendize this for the future? I'm assuming we couldn't take action on it tonight. It's not agendized that way.
Right, not agendized, but we've talked about it on the staff level, similar to what Ms. Rodman has stated, and we will prepare something to bring that back to you for an option to consider.
I think that would be, council concur with that? All right. Is there someone that would like to make a motion on the consent calendar with the understanding that staff will bring back a report to look at the membership makeup of our various committees and commissions?
I'll move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas, excuse me.
All right. Thank you very much. Consent calendar is approved. And Sue, thank you for that observation with those. Look forward to seeing if we cannot further enrich the ability for people to help us on our various committees. We have no ordinances or public hearings this evening, which brings us to item 12.1, a discussion item to review a proposed vegetation management ordinance and provide input to staff. Mr. Morris.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The document you have before you tonight is another draft of our proposed vegetation management ordinance. There is still some work that needs to be done on it, but we wanted to update the council, let you know where we're at on this. Again, there's still some review that needs to take place. As noted, you received comments from Sue Rodman on this that I handed out to you tonight, and also comments from Tom Cumston on this. We think that this is much improved from the last ordinance that we brought to you, the draft. We have shortened it up, and we believe it is still in line with what the county ordinance will be. We received a draft of theirs. However, we've shortened ours up to meet our needs, and we think it meets what we would like to do. Again, this was put together between the city attorney, myself, our development services director, Pierre Rivas, and our code enforcement officer, Diane Palmer. Again, this is designed to help us move towards creating a safe environment in terms of fire hazards in our city. We think that this will help us go a long ways. I need to emphasize with this plan, and still not adopted, our plan for this current year will probably be mostly an extensive communication program, education program with our public. In talking with the county, that is primarily what their plan is too, that the first year will be that, and then we'll be hopefully fully ramped up to implement this in the coming year. Obviously, it's not the best to get this ramped up and going to where we would be forcing people to clean up their properties in July and August, because that potentially creates new fire hazards for that. So we think that we can get this up and going, take our time putting together the right program for the city. There will be some issues with staffing to make sure that this works in conjunction with our fire district and our own staffing to make sure it can be implemented, and then we can move forward with it. So the purpose of tonight is to give you another opportunity to review this, take input from the public, and then give feedback back to staff that we can look at and bring back and further refine this ordinance. So with that, if there are any questions from council, I'll be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Cleve. Does any council member have a question for Mr. Morris at this time?
Not at this time.
All right, then.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, Councilmember Taylor, please go ahead.
I think in the first draft there was a section for unimproved lands having a perimeter, and Mr. Cumston mentioned that too in his letter. I think it would be great to get a section added back to it that addresses the large plots of unimproved.
And we pretty much agree with that. I've discussed that with the city attorney, and we recognize that that's an area we still need to fix and add into here. So we're not in disagreement with that.
There is some language in there which would apply to unimproved properties, but it's not specific with regard to a perimeter, and that can be easily added right below that paragraph.
Okay, thank you.
All right. If there's no other questions right now, Yeah, that's
I was a little late on the trigger there.
No, that's okay.
One of the things in item 7-16-6 prohibited conduct, there's a point where it says no accumulation of refuge, but over the winter, I think burn piles and things get accumulated, not during fire season. And I don't know that the intent of this is to go out during the winter and enforce this. However, I think to recognize that those shouldn't be in place during fire season.
I think the key there, Councilmember Thomas, is the language at the end, which says in such a manner as to constitute a fire hazard. And in the winter, you're not going to have a fire hazard. So I would hope we could leave that language as it is, because I think we need that language without getting into what season it is, what time of the year it is. Fall, winter, I mean, we get a lot of rain. It may not be a fire hazard.
Nope. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and open this up for public comment. If there's a member of the public that would like to address the council on item 12.1, the draft ordinance for vegetation management. Anyone interested, please approach the podium.
Sue Rodman, resident. While you already have what I wrote, I would still like to present this to you. I think this is a very good upgrade from what we saw before. Good changes, keep going. But I think that one of the problems I see is, since this is a hazardous vegetation ordinance, it needs to be the main point. And it kind of gets lost. It doesn't come up first all the time. And one of the other main problems I see is that the connection between vegetation as fuel and what people think of vegetation as landscape needs to be made. The entire ordinance depends on people understanding that their privacy shrubbery can also be fire fuel. It needs to be clear, and it's that is never clarified in this ordinance. And it also requires maintenance of defensible space without a really definition of what defensible space is. The handout at the community chat that illustrated defensible space did a really good job. So with that in mind, we do 7.16.2. I think we need to rearrange that and say that the first thing we need to talk about is uncontrolled growth and accumulation of hazardous vegetation and combustible materials. Then all the rest of it can go through and then say, yeah, that creates a fire hazard, as being the first thing that we're concerned about, instead of reducing the value of private property, blight, deterioration, plundering, all that. It's the first thing we need to be concerned about is creating a fire hazard. Sometimes beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but fuel is fuel, and if it's going to burn, that's a problem. And so in 16.3.3, put the most relevant things on the list first. Hazardous vegetation needs to be moved up to number A. And then you can continue with the existing list. But I think having the fire chief and development services director buried in the middle is counterproductive. They need to be either at the beginning or at the end, so people know where to go. And 7.16.5, your duty to abate hazardous vegetation and combustible materials. In the middle it says, except for those roads accepted into the county maintained system. And I wondered if that's left over from the county ordinance, or it doesn't seem to belong.
You caught him.
Okay. I thought, well, maybe it applies to Caltrans. Maybe not. Then land that is covered with flammable material is down under C1, under that same section, in defining people who own lease controlled. And it says at all times shall do all of the following: land that is covered with flammable material. There's no definition there. It's way too unclear. It's land inside the city, isn't it? And then we come to the little paragraph with a small a that says defensible space, 100 feet. And then it says the amount of fuel modification, then fuel shall be maintained, and fuel shall not form, and consistent fuels management. And for the purposes of this paragraph, fuel means any combustible materials, including petroleum-based products and wildland fuels. Hello. You've defined a term with the same term. Fuel means fuel means fuel. You need to say that it's wildland vegetation or that it's vegetative material. And this paragraph, I would say, comes right out of a Forest Service handbook, where everybody that's already familiar with wildland fire, and then this is clear. But it may not be clear to people outside CAL FIRE, the county, or the Forest Service organizations. We need to make it so that it's friendly enough and clear enough that all of our residents understand what we're talking about too.
Sue, could you wrap up, please?
Yes. The last one is violations. I think for a violation in any succeeding year, the fines need to be doubled. If you have 3 succeeding years, the fine will be tripled. And if violation continues for 4 succeeding years, fines need to be multiplied by a factor of 10. We need to let people know we're serious.
Thank you very much, as always, for your fine review work. Thank you for finding that little oversight that got left in from the county draft. And it's all taken, as intended. This is a draft, and this is actually the second draft, but we're still on the draft phase. This is the time to find these things and get these clarifications. Would someone else like to address the council on this item? Please come forward, and if you would state your name. And I would ask that you do your best to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Good evening.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. My name is Martin Cordero. I'm a resident of 95667, not specifically in the city of Placerville. However, I was just recently dropped from my fire insurance. I think by the hum, you can tell that I'm not alone. Maybe even some of the council members experienced a certain thing. I don't feel it's appropriate for the city to, I don't feel it's appropriate for the city to overreach what their mission is and to stay true to what they're supposed to do for public safety, the governance of the city. However, this type of a policy, if it can do anything to help residents so that we may have some ammunition to go back to whomever we need to go to fight our battle. I'm not asking for the city to do that. But if this type of ordinance can be placed to where it legitimately can show, look at the requirements that I am held to. Don't leave me in this wildland fire zone 6 is what I believe I am in. And nobody insures a wildland fire zone 6, except for out-of-state providers, the second-tier providers, and they unfortunately are double to triple the costs. So anything that the city council and staff can drive in this policy that can help citizens, even outside of the city limits, because again, I still have a Placerville zip code. I live in Greenstone, and I am just as affected as somebody who lives here as I am out there. And so if you can help to show that we are held to a higher standard, and whatever type of fines that may require or whatever type of legitimacy legally that states, a lot of the good input that Ms. Roberts, I believe, has brought up has been fantastic. These things would address some opportunities for success for anybody who might want to sit on the phone and argue with their underwriter, which I advise is not a fun thing to do. But that being said, again, I understand the city has certain legal requirements to do what they need to do. However, I don't want to see any type of overarching power trying to be extended by a city. I'm just asking for language that may address concerns for folks who are mandated. Pretty much anybody and everybody has a mortgage these days, and you have to have fire insurance. So if that could be in there, that'd be fantastic. If not, completely understood. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comment. Appreciate it from a neighbor. Fire knows no boundaries and doesn't recognize them. Mr. Smith, welcome
Yes.
again.
Mayor, I commend the staff. Again, it's an improvement, but as Ms. Rodman said, it had no place but to go up. There's still language that's extraordinarily vague. I can't think of how you could go from this building up to the Druids Monument and not find virtually every structure that would be in violation of this. Trees within 100 feet, limbs over crossing. So it really is extraordinarily vague and allows for all kinds of mischief. That's my principal concern. I did mention to you before a couple times about up on Sacramento Hill, there are trees I'd love to top. I can't because public utilities have their lines going through the trees, weaving through them. There's no way I would want to assume the liability for topping a tree that could cut off a power line or a utility line, and there's nothing that's been done to address that. I think that utility companies in this zip code should be required to follow the same kind of vegetation requirements. I can't clean the property that's near those power lines for that reason, no matter how many years I've wanted to trim that. You have some extraordinarily vague language like referring to seeds that are downy and wingy thing. I don't know what that means. It kind of conjures up the image of feathers. The idea about compost, I don't know how that would be hazardous, but a compost pile that you use for your garden could be covered by this. So those are the concerns I have. Also, it just scares me, frankly, about the unequal enforcement that can arise. And let's assume it's never happened before, but that is a popular perception. For example, up on Coloma Street, just across from the old sanatorium, there's a house that was required to cut a tree down with the declaration that had been infected by pine beetles. I'll bring in a section for you in a couple weeks, just like the photograph of that power lines I've been talking about. And I'll let you look at the tree and you tell me what arborist or entomologist looked at it and determined that it's got pine beetles. Because that person had to pay $3,000 on top of what they already did to top it, or they would get one of those, as they did, nasty letters telling them we're going to put a lien on your property. And this has cropped up a number of times, and it can happen. That kind of mischief can happen because of the vagueness of these rules. So they need to be tightened. I know a few years ago in my neighborhood, CAL FIRE came around and put door tags on, announcing that they were available to come by and give inspections, and it was great. They were really helpful. But last year when I spent $3,000 for a new team to come in and clear, I came down to the local fire department to ask, and nobody knew anything about that, weren't able to provide that kind of advice. I think it'd be good to have some central repository of information the public can go to, whether it's your website, whether it's the fire department or somebody you can go to and get advice like how close can it be to the highway that has to be cleared in order to be safe. That kind of information needs to be out there. For the first year, I don't care how long it takes you to do it, it's better that it be done right, done effectively, than done at all. So that's the suggestion, is give it another close whack. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Good evening.
My name is Ben Silveski. I'm here representing the Placerville Fire Safe Council. So our group formed about 3 months ago. We're one of the newer fire safe councils in El Dorado County. We're a nonprofit, we're a satellite group of a nonprofit organization. Our goal is to provide a fire safe community in Placerville and to work and educate people to do better around their home and manage vegetation and harden their home. We support an ordinance. Our group definitely thinks that what the city currently has is inadequate and we need something much more robust in order to maintain a fire adapted community. But I would say that it still needs some work. I've attempted to coordinate with the city on behalf of the Fire Safe Council, and I will say we are a little bit disappointed that we weren't contacted to discuss what you guys put out last week. So hopefully moving into the future we can have a chance to take a shot and provide some detailed comments on the next draft. I won't be able to get into all of our issues today in the 2 minutes that we have going on. I will say that I agree with some of the other people that have commented that there needs to be some more specificity on what some of these terms mean. I think landowners shouldn't be guessing what they're supposed to be doing. It should be more clear. And specifically, the ordinance doesn't mention California Resource Code or Public Resource Code 4291 and those requirements. There's a lot of science out there that says that if landowners would achieve their defensible space criteria that's mandated by the state, that 90 to 95% of the homes that burn in a wildfire wouldn't actually burn in the fire. So, and the gentleman was right. Most of the houses in this community aren't in compliance with those defensible space criteria. Our group is actually working right now on a risk assessment for the city. We've broken the city into different zones and are going out and taking note of all the places that we see out of compliance and what are the key features in the city area that we would like to see fuel treatments done, and then what neighborhoods are most out of compliance. And I would say that the vast majority of homeowners are not in compliance with 4291. And somehow we need to start moving this city into that condition, or else we're going to lose a lot of homes eventually in a fire. That's just the facts. Anyways, I hope to engage with you guys further and provide more specific comments on the ordinance in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Any other member of the public wishing to address the council on this item? All right, seeing no one else approaching the council podium, rather, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Okay, come up, please.
Thank you for holding off for me. Marion Washburn, resident of Placerville, also a member of the Placerville Fire Safe Council. Just here to reiterate my support for what you're trying to accomplish. I think it's desperately needed. All we have to do is think back to previous summers of what's happened to other communities to know that something needs to be done. One thing that I would ask for or suggest within the language that you have is a more reference to a dead material. That there was one small phrase that referred to that, but there is such, especially this year, a large amount of tree fall from the various storms that we've had that it's almost like somebody's laid the kindling out there. That I think that is a specific term that people could wrap their brains around and know what that is, discouraged from letting that accumulate. So if you could include more references to dead wood material. And I would like to support Council Member Taylor's mention of the unimproved parcels. I think after having done some of the survey work for the Fire Safe Council, what I'm finding is that there's just a huge number of residential lots that back up to some very large parcels, probably owned by out-of-town property owners, but they're left kind of dormant in the sense that they're not maintained at all, and there's just such a large number of homes that would be affected if a fire started there. And I realize it's going to be a knotty problem because they're large and their owners are probably not local, but nonetheless, I think those parcels probably have the largest danger for Placerville residents. I've got a few seconds left. Let me just say that the Fire Safe Council is a group of volunteer citizens and separate from the city. I think there's some confusion out there as far as who's doing what and who authorized this. The Fire Safe Council is there to try to assist the city or city residents both in getting the work done and paying for that work that needs to be done in the future. That will be the goal, is we can bring money into the community to deal with the problems that we have for folks who don't necessarily have the wherewithal to deal with their private situations. So, thank you very much.
Thank you for those comments, Marion. Any other member of the public wish to address the council? Okay. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Jamie Lowe. I am also a resident of Placerville and on the board for the Placerville Fire Safe Council. I won't repeat everything that's already been said. I wanted to thank you guys for actually coming to our meeting this week so we can keep that line of communication open. We are curious going forward because I think there's so much that we're having to navigate in terms of understanding the state, the county, the city, and we're just getting started on this, and we're all aware that this is a process. This is going to take years. So we're just curious what the best way would be to interface with you guys to make sure we're helping with whatever you guys are working on there. And we have obviously some professional, we have a lot of good feedback on that document. We also have a lot of questions about how to proceed. So I'm not sure if I can get that answer now, but we want to figure out how we'd be able to communicate on a regular basis for that.
All right, thank you very much. Once again, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the council on this item? Seeing no one approaching the podium, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the council and staff. Let me start with a few comments, clarifications if I could. Just to remind everybody that this is the first draft. There is no rush in this document. Well, actually, this is a second draft. Pardon me, second draft. So we will do more drafts on this. I think it's very important to get this correct. The fire seasons have been with us for many years. It was sad that the Paradise disaster is what brought it forward to everybody's mind. And I think that we will build from that event and make this town safer. Regarding Mr. Zielinski's comment, the council has had an open invitation to the Fire Safe Council since January to appear at any of our meetings up to this point. And because of your organizational efforts, nobody's been available. So I really don't want the impression that we rushed this out and there was any attempt to circumvent anybody else's ability to review this. I'm hopeful that by the time we finish with this item in a few minutes, that we will see that there's going to be significant opportunities for the Fire Safe Council to address all the concerns. What I think I'm hearing also is that the Fire Safe Council as it exists right now is a very well-organized, very directed, very documented county organization that has operated very successfully in the county. The county areas are all state responsibility areas, or SRA, except for the city, well, no, El Dorado Hills is even SRA. So now I would show the challenge out to the Fire Safe Council is you're going to be dealing with an LRA or jurisdiction where you're absolutely right. None of the structures on any given street meet CAL FIRE standards. I'm very familiar with all the state resource codes. We also will not be successful proceeding if we give the impression that we're going to mandate people to clear cut their 50-foot wide lots in town in our older neighborhoods. This is going to be a long exercise in making a fire safe regulation work in Placerville for our historic neighborhoods, for the neighborhoods that abut the vacant properties that have been talked about. I would remind Mr. Rivas on our staff, about 3 years ago, he and I worked on an effort to try and get the current owner of the remaining portions of Cottonwood to be responsible, because that acreage presented a huge jeopardy to all those homes along Clay Street. I believe it was a bank that owned the property at that time. And he worked to try and have some mitigations done. So I have tried for 5 years to try and get the Lumsden Ranch owners to be responsible neighbors to do something along that 128 acres. So it hasn't been because we haven't been trying. It's just because there's been a lack of resources and, sadly, a lack of willpower on a lot of people's parts. It's very difficult and it's very expensive work. Every week in my neighborhood, I see what I now call an insurance tree job taking place, where you can see where all the limbs are removed, the trees are topped, the trees are removed, and large junipers and all these types of shrubberies are now going away. There was another one a couple days ago that just happened in my neighborhood. So every week I'm seeing the impact of all these fires. So I would wonder if we had, as a council, the opportunity to allow staff to take the comments this evening and incorporate them. We've had some very good ones, some very excellent comments, and some clarifications and what have you, and bring this back to us. And the other thing that we haven't done is we had a community chat, and I really think it was more of a community notification or a community educational. I think we really need to have a community chat on this particular item, where once we revise this again for the third time, we'll bring it back with these incorporations and actually have an opportunity for the public to engage in the next go-around. And in looking in the April calendar, I see that we have a 5th Tuesday. Would it be possible for staff, and if the council so desires, to have them go back and work on this and set this up for a community chat that would be, what would that be, the 30th of April?
Yes.
Okay. Now, one last thing, I'm sorry to do this. We have identified Patty Borelli as the council liaison. She was appointed last month by myself to the Fire Safe Council, so she is your point of contact for the City Council, and a letter will be going out to the Board of Directors for the Fire Safe Council indicating that that's the city's representative and the mayor. It will become an annual mayor task to make sure that a representative from this council is a part of the Fire Safe Council makeup. So I'm sorry for going on so long.
I just have a comment. I agree with you. I really do think that another community chat would be appropriate at this time. You can see just tonight all the input that we've had and the suggestions, and I think the folks that live amongst all this are certainly, they have the deepest interest naturally. But I really would like to see another chat. And like you said, this is just a draft, but that's what we're here for, is to hear, to improve where maybe we've had some. So I'm in agreement.
You stepping up to take the assignment. Councilmember Thomas.
There was a characterization about the county fire and somebody showing up to the Station 25 to ask about what to do with their property. And my experience has been with county fire that they are more than willing at any time, given within their schedule, to come out to your house and do what's called an LE 100 and do an evaluation of your property. And that has been an ongoing, I've had them actually do it to my property to give me an understanding of what I need to do to create a safe zone around my house. And that is something that they will do, and they have done. And I've had conversations with them about this over the last several years, and they do these. So it is something that County Fire does do as part of our community.
Thank you, Dennis. Yeah, Vice Mayor Zaragoza.
Yeah, I too think the community chat would be a great idea. I think Mr. Smith's comments about making sure we do this correctly as opposed to doing this quickly is well said, and it's certainly what I would agree with as well. We want to make sure we do this correctly as we go forward, so that this is in place and done well for years to come. And so we have tools in place today that, as next fire season rolls around, if we have some egregious bad actors out there, we can take the appropriate action to make sure that we're taking care of those areas. But what I don't want to see is us rush something so that we're trying to get it in place for this next fire season. It's better to do this right. And I think we have some incredible amount of people that are excited, that are part of the Fire Safe Council, that are deeply ingrained in this and put a lot of effort into it. And so I want to make sure all those voices are appropriately heard. And I want to thank Tom Cumston as well as Sue Rodman for their really well thought out comments that they provided to us as well. Thank you.
All right. So that sounds like direction to staff then. Councilmember Taylor, did you have any other comments?
Well, I agree that we should listen to all voices and do this the right way. I hope that we can also do this for this fire season. I hope that we can do it the right way and for this fire season, not one way or the other. So, and then I've mentioned this before, and I'll say it again, that I think that this document's great. I really want to make sure that there are resources for people who need them, in terms of financial resources or just labor to help with this work, because it will be a lot of work for a lot of people to get this done. So having a central location, like Mr. Smith mentioned, it sounds like that might be the Fire Safe Council.
Oh, absolutely.
But just making sure that we're helping get the information out and helping provide resources for people that need it.
Sure, thank you very much. And going forward, I would expect to see the Fire Safe Council representative at council meetings as appropriate in a part of the regular agenda. Certainly a report from Councilmember Borelli at her work with the Fire Safe Council as our current liaison. I was reminded that I would like to clarify one other thing that Mr. Smith has mentioned a couple of times, and he has shown us, or I've seen it online, the photo he has of the utility lines. 2 points. There have been for decades state regulations that apply to all electrical utilities, and specifically PG&E and SMUD in our area. They have a highly detailed set of requirements that they have to follow, and failure to follow those can and did lead to bankruptcy. So there's no need for this ordinance to address utility operations. It's already highly documented in the California Public Utility Code. So, Mr. Smith, if you have concerns with those regulations, I would suggest the CPUC website. They have some information there under General Order 95. Also, in particular, the other notion that you'll find is the particular equipment that is in that photo is all telecommunication equipment, and it falls under a no trimming required. So unfortunately, the communication utility world has little to no interest in trimming trees around their lines because there is no operational hazards to them. There's also no electrical hazard, generally speaking. So it's fortunate or unfortunate that those particular lines, I don't think you'll find any regulation that will mandate a utility to address them. But again, those are communication facilities. So just thank you for allowing me to clarify that. So, Clive, do you feel like we've certainly gotten some great comments, some great written comments? We'll look forward to a presentation for a community chat. We should start advertising that as soon as possible. It'll be held here on April 30th, and I'll assume that that meeting will start at 6 o'clock. And what we will do at that community chat is present the next draft of this ordinance. It'll take all of the comments made this evening into consideration. So April 30th, 6 p.m. here at Town Hall for the fire safe ordinance.
My concern is that we have that draft out early enough for the fire council and other members to, review it more than just a three-day, required under the Brown Act. So I know that I'm sure it's your intent, but I wanted to make sure that that's done.
Right. It's our intent to meet with the Fire Safe Council. I know Ben has sent me an email, and I plan on communicating with him to have him sit down with us and go through what their current concerns are. Not concerns, but recommendations are. And we can review those and see how we can make a complete ordinance. So we do plan on doing that prior to, well in advance of that April 30th.
Well in advance. So that's before April 10th. Before April 28th. That we don't want. This is a serious item. I appreciate everybody's. I have been fighting this battle for a long time, and it's very gratifying to see that we're getting someplace with it. All right, well, we're going to move on to a pleasant item now. Item 12.2, directing staff to proceed with a Spring Street, Pleasant Street intersection safety program. Who has
Mayor
that
Kuna,
staff report?
I find that I must recuse myself from this particular item.
All right, I will stand by then. Councilmember Borelli has declared a conflict because
I belong to the Shakespeare Club and they are a part of this.
All right, very good. Thank you. Councilmember Borelli will be recusing herself because she is a member of the Shakespeare Club. We'll allow her a moment to leave the room as required by state regulation. We'll put her in the secret phone booth. All right, I believe she's probably safely back there in the kitchen. I believe the city engineer, Rebecca Neves, has a report. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Acuna, Vice Mayor Zaragoza, and council members. As you mentioned, this is indeed a pleasant item. It's the project related to Spring Street and Pleasant Street intersection safety project. And this item before you will allow the direction of staff to proceed with that project along with the appropriated funding related to the Highway Safety Improvement Program. So the intersection of Spring Street and Pleasant Street has been identified by staff in the community as an unsafe intersection for pedestrians. As you know, Spring Street is a narrow two-lane major collector roadway with limited shoulders and no sidewalk. Currently, pedestrians routinely cross Spring Street at this uncontrolled crossing, and driver sight distance is limited with a steep vertical grade to the west and a sharp horizontal curve to the east with no warning to drivers of the pedestrians crossing. The city has been made aware of the unsafe conditions and has been identifying potential solutions to improve the pedestrian safety at the intersection for some time now. City Council has received written communication regarding the safety concerns at the intersection as recent as February 24, 2017, citing an incident where a member of the community fell in the street and was nearly hit by a vehicle. In looking at the accident history, there have been 2 accidents in the past 3 years within that intersection. A little bit about the funding source. The Highway Safety Improvement Program, or HSIP as we refer to it, released a call for projects in their Cycle 9 round of funding. Staff met and discussed potential projects, and the recommendation was to proceed with submitting an application for the Spring Street and Pleasant Street intersection. The project proposes to install advanced warning signage, pavement markings, a rapid flashing beacon system similar to the one that was recently installed on Broadway, along with curb, gutter, sidewalk, and ADA compliant ramps at the intersection. The project is a good candidate for the funding criteria and scored favorably due to the road classification, average daily traffic, and the challenges of the project itself. Staff was notified on December 28th that the submitted application was successful for full funding of the requested amount totaling $113,600 with no local match requirement, which is a rarity for federal funding. Concurrently, the city is proceeding with the Spring Street pavement rehabilitation project, and it will include some storm drain improvements as well. Once that project is complete, the pavement condition of Spring Street will be greatly improved, which will inevitably result in increased driver speeds. Increased driver speed does reduce sight distance, making the proposed improvements of this project even more necessary in the interest of public safety. As a little side note, I found out today that El Dorado County is aging gracefully, and we are now ranked 2nd in the nation for the largest elderly population. Congratulations to us.
All right. I feel better.
Staff's recommendations are summarized in the report before you this evening, and that concludes my verbal report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you very much, City Engineer Neves. Is there any council questions at this point as the project has been described to us?
Yes. Is there any expectation that the Shakespeare Club would need to do any modification to their parking lot to meet up with the ADA ramps that are going in?
No, the city is limiting its responsibility to the area that's within the right-of-way at that location.
Just a quick question on the timing element of Spring Street construction. We don't put any funds in jeopardy in terms of we have to do that first and then this project would come after that, I would assume. But that doesn't jeopardize the funding of this if we are delayed, in other words, with the rest of the Spring Street rehabilitation? No,
it wouldn't. They're going to end up being 2 separate contracts regardless. But obviously you would want the grind and overlay to proceed first, right, and then this improvement. And the city has a very good delivery reputation with HSIP, and they have worked with us on deferring construction a year or so if we needed to. Although it's not favorable, they prefer to keep on track. It helps with their programming as well.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Carrie, you're the only one. Nothing?
I feel pretty
You're good right now?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and open up the public comment on this item and ask any member of the public that would like to address the council on item 12.2 to please come forward and state your name for the record. I think you may want to pull that down.
Down.
There we go.
Is that right?
There we go. Thank you.
My name is Margaret Lockwood. I'm the recent past president of the Placerville Shakespeare Club and a co-chair of our safety committee. We're a nonprofit club that was established in 1897, so we have some standing in the community. I will be the only speaker for our group, so I'm going to ask that you waive the 3-minute rule if we should go over. It sure won't be long over. I also have some friends, members of Shakespeare Club here who have a real interest in this project. Do I need your approval?
No, ma'am. I'm going to ask that you can represent yourself as one of the project proponents, and
Yes.
therefore there would not be a 3-minute rule.
I am clearly in
Yes.
favor.
Okay. Please
Our-
proceed.
Our clubhouse is located fronting Bedford Avenue and has the parking lot across the street on Spring Street at Pleasant Street. We dedicate most of the parking spaces adjacent to our building to handicap parking, and way more than would be required normally. Therefore, many of our attendees for all of our events use the Spring Street lot. Recognizing the inherent dangers of that topography on Spring Street, the club has been requesting the attention of the city for decades. Every few years we bring it to a planning meeting or to a city council, or we've pursued this forever. We're very excited that you're considering approval of plans for making the street safer for all of its users, and we appreciate all the work that the engineer's office and the others have done in obtaining the federal funding to make this proposed safety improvements. We thank you. Research for a Women's Fund grant recently resulted in conservative estimate of 25,000 people at events at the Shakespeare Club over the most recent 3 years. That's more than 8,000 people a year are going in and out of that building for events, ours and others. The clubhouse itself is widely considered to be an important asset to the community and is referred to as an unofficial community center. It's used, of course, for club activities, such as the Bluegrass Band concert that we had over the weekend, where more than 100 city residents and visitors attended. In addition, from time to time, as requested, we've offered the use of the clubhouse free of charge to groups such as the El Dorado High School workshop on bullying that needed to be held off campus. We offered the Imagination Theater free use of its performances when its own quarters had a fire. I anticipate that we'll continue with this kind of community service. Spring Street is used daily by students from the high school and neighborhood residents. On Thursday, I saw a woman pushing a toddler in a stroller uphill at the corner of Pleasant Street. As Highway 50 traffic continues to increase, especially at Apple Hill times, Spring Street becomes part of a go-around. Its steep grade and blind curves completely present a growing danger. The presence alone of this highly visible crosswalk and the enhanced signage will be a speed alert to all drivers, even when the crossing lights are not in use. Shortly, our members appreciate the time and the attention given to us in navigating this process by Councilwoman Patty Borelli. She's been a Shakespeare member for many years. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them now.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? There don't appear to be any. Thank you very much. Is there any other member of the public that wishes to address this item? Good evening.
Good evening again. Marion Washburn, Placerville resident. I just have to say, this is great. I live in the area and use this intersection fairly frequently, and have seen so many perilous crossings that because it's a kind of party venue, quite often there are people who are dressed up wearing shoes that are definitely not running shoes, They're with their families. They're trying to escape fast-moving cars. It kind of actually makes you think of those signs that they have on the freeways down in the San Diego area that show the silhouette of fleeing families. Well, that's what it looks like on Spring Street. People, I think, are almost deer in the headlights because they know they have a very brief time to get across, and they're usually wearing their dress-up shoes. Also, I have to confirm what was just previously said about the GPS systems that people are using recently are directing a lot more traffic through that street, and those people are unfamiliar with the conditions. So, and that's usually on the weekends. So when the parties and large occasions occur. So there's kind of this convergence of both the traffic and the pedestrians. So I'm thrilled to finally know that the city can move forward on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Someone else wish to address the council on item 12.2?
Sue Rodman, resident, and I have been to occasions at the Shakespeare Club and parked across the street at Spring Street and run for my life across this intersection. And I would definitely support, we need to do something. This is another place where we need to keep our safety, safety ears, safety eyes up, and do something about these things that are really dangerous. This has been a dangerous place to get across for a long time, and I'm really glad. Yay, Rebecca.
Does any other member of the public wish to address the council on this item? Seeing no one else approaching the podium, I'll go ahead and close public comment on this, bring it back to the council for questions and action on the item. I had a couple of questions, but I can go last if there are questions.
Comments, no questions.
Okay, comments. Go ahead.
All right, we're going to comments. I have been going to that facility for probably the last 47, 8, 9, 10 years. So, and I have had the occasion to try very hard to dodge traffic there. And at night, dark streets, raining, it is definitely a dangerous occasion to have to try and cross that street at times. I think it's imperative that if we have the opportunity here and now to address this issue, I think that it's addressing this issue on behalf of all the citizens of this community and everybody that uses that facility, and not just that facility by itself. Being a nonprofit organization, I don't see that they would benefit from this. However, our community would benefit from this significantly. And with that, I look forward to the opportunity to vote for this.
Similar comments. I drive Spring Street, I think, almost every day. When I go home to my house off of Green Street, I take the back way, and it's I've certainly stopped for people as they're going across. I know the area, so I drive very slow through there. But certainly people fly through that area well beyond 30 miles an hour, and I can tell you, as someone that may occasionally cross the threshold of the speed limit, sorry, Chief, at least not on the freeway, I will say that. It can be a very dangerous area, and I think the enhanced signals will be another deterrent for folks that are driving through that area to slow down. I think Rebecca's comments in terms of as the street gets rehabilitated and it's smoother and people will naturally start driving. I hadn't even thought about that, so I think that's another good thing to kind of put an underline underneath, because it is a dangerous intersection. I actually thought there was more than 2 accidents that had happened there, so I'm glad it was a lower number, but still, it's an area that is dangerous. I mean, I actually, Chief, wouldn't mind seeing a car out there a couple of times, maybe just parked. A couple of people getting some tickets there might actually, at least for the locals, let them know that you can't go flying through that section. So I think it's a great thing, and I'll make the motion to move this item.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it. I'd also just like to make a comment. as a resident and a parent and a council member, the unsafe roads in this town are one of my top concerns. So any project that I see that's improving a really dangerous section makes me really happy. And I'm especially happy to see that this is being 100% funded with federal funds. And it's not going to cost, the residents of Placerville anything really. So with that, I'll second the motion.
All right, well, with the motion on the floor, I probably should have asked this question earlier, but I'm the mayor. Mr. Rivas, in years past, there's been some conflicts between the bed and breakfast, I believe it's called the Seasons or the Four Seasons, and the operation, it's operating, let's see, it's using a conditional use permit, and it has a parking requirement. And at one time, it was using parking on the Shakespeare Club, and I noticed this, one of the signs out there today says no B&B parking. Please, no comments.
Yeah,
What's the status of that B&B?
Yeah, the Four Seasons is operating under a conditional use permit, though I know the Four Seasons holds wedding. It's a wedding venue, but the conditional use permit did not consider the wedding venue. So that is currently an unpermitted activity associated with that bed and breakfast.
Okay, thank you. So there's been no enforcement activities in relation to the B&B?
There has been none. We have not gotten any complaints about that.
Okay, thank you. I was out there this evening, probably captured on the club security video, wandering around trying out the intersection. Because I know the driveway, which is now blocked off, used to go into the back of the B&B, and there was at one time conflicts with the operation of that B&B. So I just playing on the history of the site a little bit. Rebecca, the operation of these lights, we will have dark lighting unless someone hits the button. Is that correct? Or will these lights flash constantly?
They are push button triggered, and they're operated and powered through solar panels, similar to how it is on Broadway. And then the crosswalk, there's a few things too that are along with these improvements is there will be advanced warning signage on either direction for drivers, a high visibility or ladder style crosswalk, and then the rapid flashing beacons that pedestrians can touch and they will activate.
And are they totally solar powered, or do they have a utility connection?
They are totally solar powered, just like the ones on Broadway.
Okay, so, and those are working out okay?
Yes, sir.
As far as holding a charge to do their duty at night?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. I just was wondering how this was going to work. Had there been any thought as to adding or improving the existing street light once we put a crosswalk in there?
That was not something that this funding source would cover. I mean, we can certainly look at that at a future date or even with the city's project, but that would not, that was not one of the countermeasures that is approved through the funding source.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Appreciate that. Just observations. I know I have gone to dozens, or not more, events at the Shakespeare Club over the years, and most of those have been paid events. And when I first saw this item, I thought, well, yeah, it's a hazardous crosswalk. But I wasn't sure that we had reviewed all the other hazardous crosswalks that exist in town. So I guess my last question to staff is, do we have a list of the sites that we reviewed that this one rose to the #1 danger, the most dangerous existing?
Yes, we do, actually. On July 31st of last year, we had our Public Works Engineering Coordination meeting, which was attended by department heads for Development Services and Community Services. Mr. Rivas here attended with us, as well as City Manager Morris and myself and the prior Public Works Operations Manager. The projects that were discussed at that time were Benham Street, Spring Street, Sierra School, Schnell School, Cedar Ravine, and Thompson Road. As we collectively discussed the projects, we went through the criteria associated with the funding source, and we were running up pretty closely to the application deadline as well. And then through the discussion, we collectively came up with Spring Street being the applicant that, or the application that would fit the funding criteria the most directly. That's not to say that we won't go after the other projects at a later date. We do have a good delivery reputation with the program, and so every time they do a call for projects, we get an application.
So, was it Benham? You said Benham? That would be across Pacific behind the post office?
It would be the one, the crosswalk, mid-block crosswalk to the Aquatic Center.
To the Aquatic Center?
Yes, sir.
I see near misses there every week.
Yes, yeah, we have
Every
a few of
week.
those.
I see kids, adults, postal customers, postal workers. That I couldn't believe that that one was not the number one in this criteria. My concern is just that these are public funds, and this is very much a private property project. I mean, and is it a facility that is rented out? It is a 501c3. I expected some what shall I say, concern that we would be expending funds for a private organization, if you will. If the Moore Workshop needed a crosswalk at their rehabilitated facility, would we be extending the same consideration to them? Would in future calls for projects, would we champion that forward? Or, this is an organization running a for rent facility, and these are public tax dollars. I just have to make sure that this is aired for my own conscience, because we have a responsibility to make sure that we have done our due diligence in looking at any other projects that are in the city.
Yeah, I mean, I will speak to the repeated notification to not only City Council but City staff too regarding the expressed concern from the community. We often, when we engage in these projects, it does come down to just direct public input. That's how we ended up adding the pedestrian connection feature on the Upper Broadway project. Mm-hmm. So, what's to say that curb, gutter, and sidewalk in that area isn't an improvement or a private improvement either? But I mean, the fact of the matter is that if it's a known condition to the city and there's a safety concern, a genuine safety concern, then we do our best to address it.
All right, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that. Are there any other questions for staff? Comments? All right, then I will go ahead and call for the question. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Acuna?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, you are the awarders of a federal government grant. That doesn't happen very often. And I look forward to going to a retirement party there soon. Maybe it'll be mine. Thank you very much. Councilmember Borelli has been released from her exile. Good evening, ladies. Thank you very much for your fine presentation. We appreciate your consideration with your presentation to the council. Thank you. I'm going to tell them you sent me. The past president sent me. Right. Welcome back, Councilmember Borelli. And then so noted that Supervisor Veerkamp is diligently attending our meeting as we move into item 12.3. Consider a request by the El Dorado Winery Association to modify and place additional signage on the Welcome to Placerville sign. Mr. Morris, do you have that report this evening for us?
Yes, thank you.
Maybe we can go up to the Shakespeare Club later.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item actually came to my attention was in a letter that was sent to me by the El Dorado Wine Growers Association in September of 2018, specifically from Lexi Boger, who is in the audience tonight, and we'll speak to you at a later date. The request was to modify the Welcome to Placerville sign to add El Dorado Wine Country as a notification on that sign. And you have that letter as an attachment to your report tonight, and it has a picture showing what that would look like. I also have pictures that I can put up on here if council desires up on the screen for the audience to see. So can you, if you can find the right one, Regina, that would be, I think it's the third one, the welcome sign, EW, yeah, that one. So there's their proposal for what they're requesting for the sign to look at. We looked at that on a staff level. and we don't really have a concern with it. It works. A couple of things that we wanted to bring to your attention, though, that as you recall, a few years ago, the Placerville Downtown Association proposed to modify the sign. One of the concerns at that time was, does putting the El Dorado Wine Country, as the example is here, on the top of the sign, put that on top of Welcome to Placerville, which is the main purpose for the sign. So is there some sort of a modification that would fit with that, but still allow that to happen? So included with your agenda, I showed some of those examples of what the Placerville Downtown Association proposed 3 years ago. That particular item was not approved. We decided not to go forward with that based on what they had. And I'm not at all promoting those pictures of the Downtown Association signs. I'm not sure that those fit what we really wanted to do at the time, but it was their proposal that came forward. Again, this is part of a movement, as I understand, from the association to try to promote the wineries that are within El Dorado County, which we think is positive. You also see, as to my understanding, they are trying to have more of a presence in Placerville. I don't know if I can say this or not, Lexi, but they have rented a facility on Main Street, which they plan to open up to further promote and get information out about those wineries. You also have a message from the Visitors Authority, which is included here in your packet, also writing on behalf of what is being done and proposing that they also agree that it can help increase tourism and agritourism, specifically in El Dorado County. So with that, as you can see from staff's report, our report is, this is not really from a safety aspect or how it might be looked at from a staff point of view. We think it's more of for the council to consider this and see if it's something that is good for our city. And so we don't really have a recommendation other than we don't see a problem with it working, other than the concerns possibly with whether or not the size of the font or whether it's on the top or in the middle where it goes. Some of those things we think maybe there's another way to do that. We're open to discussion and working with them and with the council on what that may become. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, council, and answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Cleve. Are there any questions for Mr. Morris at this point on this item? Patty, Tara? No? All right. Then is there any, I will go ahead and open public comment to this item. Does any member of the public wish to address the council on item 12.3, the proposal by the El Dorado Winery Association? Good evening.
Good evening. Terry Lamanchek, Arts and Culture El Dorado, formerly El Dorado Arts Council. We are in support of this signage. We certainly think of viticulture as an important part of our culture. People visit El Dorado County for all kinds of reasons, including wine tasting, but we think that this signage will help position El Dorado County as an important wine region, which will resonate beyond the tasting rooms and in restaurants and wine shops around the state. So we hope that you will endorse this signage proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Any other member of the public wish to address the council?
Hi, Lexi. Thank you guys for hearing our proposal. I just thought I'd add a couple more details to how we got to this point of asking for the signage. And this came out of a desire for us to find what we are calling a gateway city or a hub town or community. So as people are coming through on 50, blowing through our town and not knowing what's out there, they would have a sense of a there, where it could be the hub for the wine region, which is all over the county, but then we could be driving our consumers back to that hub city. So we're actually seeing this as more of a sort of a co-marketing situation. We have a brochure where we're looking to dedicate the lower 1/3 to this hub area. So we hand out 120,000 of those a year. Our winery just alone sees 45,000 people a year, and the first thing they ask, because they're all from out of town, is, well, what else do we do? You know, and I think the consumer who comes up for wine, which is a year-round consumer, is interested in other things just besides wine. They want good food, they want to go shopping, they want to stay in a cute hotel. So what we are hoping to do is just more than just signage, find a relationship with an area to be sort of where we drive our consumers then back after they've had their day in wine country and hopefully keep them for the weekend. So beyond the sign, that's what we're looking for. We've partnered with PDA for an upcoming event. So we've taken our big wine festival from the river, and we are now doing the Art and Wine Festival together, where we are working to share costs, labors, and profits. So in an effort to show our, our devotion to working in partnership with whoever we end up with. So we did get that rental on Main Street as well for a year. And then we're going to see at the end of the year how this whole relationship goes. So nothing is set in stone yet. However, if we do get the signage, then I think for certain we would want to talk further about really how we can really partner with the city and the businesses and all the other entities down here to make this the destination hub for when we have wine visitors up here. Did you guys have any questions for me?
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? No,
Okay.
Thank you for giving us that additional information. Any other member of the public wish to address the council on this item?
Yes, Kirk Smith. Mayor, I guess I wanted to follow up on something you said earlier in the context of a different issue, which is the council exercising due diligence, exploring these issues. In the case of the illustrations offered to you about something that had been considered by the PDA back in 2015, my recollection is it was rejected. It's something that a number of people in the community had some concerns about because the sign would be very busy. In addition, the illustrations that you have that were proposed by the PDA, or considered more accurately by them, was something that could be changed periodically. So it wasn't constant. I want to know how many wineries there are in the city of Placerville. Also, we have a number of breweries in the area that are growing, and they too have their own tour going from one brewery to another. So would we want to promote that? We also, during apple season, have a large crowd of people where this becomes the entrance into that part of the world. Same thing for cutting Christmas trees, which is not in the city limits of Placerville, but Placerville once again becomes a gateway to that. It's also a gateway to skiing, where people can stop off at local bread and breakfast places and hold up for the day as they hit the slopes early in the morning. So where does it stop? If you start here, and nice idea, but if you start here, how do you approach the next group that comes in? And do we really think that was the downtown business community asked? I don't know. Maybe it was. I don't remember it coming up. It would be a good practice, since you have created that organization, that you ask them and see what they think of the partnership, rather than have a marriage and you're asked after the marriage ceremony, well, do you like it? Those are just some of the concerns I have, and would think it would be good to exercise some due diligence. Where do you start? You know, one of the things that's great about Placerville is we have an extraordinarily large number of art galleries. The art community here is fantastic. It is comparable to what you see in a lot of big cities, and the work is only a small fraction of the price of other places. I'd love to see us encourage more people to come here because of the arts, then stay in Placerville and enjoy the great restaurants we have. That's something I'd like to see promoted more. Where does it start if you go down this road? It's just a suggestion that you consider those things in your analysis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kirk. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I know partnerships are wonderful, and I know that tourism is really important for El Dorado County for a lot of reasons, and such an important part of the beauty and the character of our county. Rafting, skiing, breweries, Christmas trees, just like Kurt said, historic and cultural sites, and the arts. The city's motto is Placerville, a unique historical past forging into a golden future. We are the heart of the gold country, and we're a historic town. To me, the logic of advertising one industry on our city sign that is not in the city seems inappropriate. Why should an out-of-town industry qualify when undoubtedly no city business or endeavor would? There's a billboard in Shingle Springs promoting Fair Play wineries. It's pretty ugly, but it is promoting them. I'm sure there are many places in the county along Highway 50 that could welcome and inform visitors of the wine country. There's the Chamber and the Visitors Authority. There are so many ways of getting the word out about the wineries, and it sounds like 43,000 visitors isn't a shabby number. And the sign is nice the way it is. And if it is appropriate to add something to emphasize that directs people, it should direct them to the city itself. It should pull them off of Highway 50. It could say something like California Gold Country, Historic Main Street, Gold Rush Town. That would get people interested. California Motherlode. It could say visit Historic Main Street, visit Historic Placerville. The emphasis on the welcome sign should be on Placerville embracing the community as a whole and not singling out one certain segment. It is the town welcoming everyone, welcoming visitors and welcoming locals home. It is beautiful, just as it is, a beautiful entrance to a historic town, not an advertising board. We want people to come and visit the town as well as heading out to enjoy the many things El Dorado County has to offer. I have the article that was in the paper 4 years ago when the PDA came. It was in 2015 when the PDA came and presented their proposal. The council, the staff, and the PDA worked together to find a different solution. I'm sure in this case there are other appropriate alternatives and other solutions. Our welcome sign needs to encourage people not to drive by, but to stop and see what the city has to offer before heading out to other parts of the county. Last, I would like to ask who really owns the sign and whose property it is on, and to encourage you to set a policy to leave the sign alone. You have a banner policy. Please develop one for the welcome sign.
Thank you for your comments, Kathy. Any other? Yes, good evening.
Hello, I'm Deborah Power, and I was a teacher at El Dorado High School for 27 years. We've used this area, so this welcome sign area is near and dear to my heart. We now, as a member of Community Pride, we're planting wildflowers and poppies, and we're really trying to renovate this welcome sign area. One of my biggest concerns is that the city economy will be affected. My concern is that it will direct tourists away from our quaint little downtown historical town. I'm afraid that it will encourage tourists to just pass through, go directly to the wineries. My concern is that this would have a negative impact to the businesses in downtown Placerville and as well as Placerville Drive. I agree that the wineries are very important to our El Dorado County economy, but I also agree with the fact that it does ignore the Apple Hill, the microbreweries, the ski and snow, cherry pickers, peach, Christmas trees, the whole list that everybody else has already listed. My concern is that this is branding, which ignores these other major contributors to our El Dorado County economy. I have another question, and that is, will this provide revenue to the city, and would it benefit the city? Would the funding be used to renovate the area surrounding the sign? Is there going to be funding to pay for maintenance, planting, and/or city beautification plans? Is there reciprocity? Is there going to be countywide signage at all the wineries encouraging the tourism for Placerville if it does indeed redirect the traffic away from the downtown? Also, how will the city respond to sign requests from these other economic entities? The cherry pickers, the apple pickers. Are we going to have a sign for the marijuana growers? What would be the visual impacts of these in adding more and more and more of these signages? So, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your comments, Deborah. Usually we don't let folks come back up, so
Okay,
we
she
shouldn't
asked a
do that this
question I
evening.
could answer.
But I
Okay,
think
thank
that
you.
we have the information.
Oh, no, so, no.
No, thank you. No, better not. To be fair, one time. One speaker. Hmm? No. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Kurt Raffetto, president of the Rotary Club of Placerville. First off, it's news to me that anybody else has been maintaining the sign because we refurbished it a few years ago. We pay for the flowers that are around it. We've cut the grass out in that area, and we've trimmed the trees. Probably not supposed to, but we've done that, and it looks a lot better. We're in favor of the sign. I understand there's other people that could ask, and what about us? What about us? But sometimes you just have to make a decision and support our area. If somebody else wants to address it and propose it in a few years, great. We could consider that. As far as ownership of the sign, I asked my dad. He's been in Rotary for 54 years. It's been there for a long time. He believes Babs Meyer, past president of Rotary, was the one that got that started. And both of them. Could be wrong, but that's his recollection. I think we get a lot of shoulder shrugs if we ask the city who owns it, because you don't want to have to maintain it. And that's why we do that. And it's just one of our services to the city. Again, we're in favor of it. If somebody else wants to propose down the road something else, that's great. But the Winery Association came to us, asking us first, and we're in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kirk. We appreciate all your efforts and all the efforts over the years by the club to maintain the sign. Lexi, I'd like to invite you to come back up since you were a part of the application for this sign, and if you would like to address, if you'd like to provide some additional information
I
to
just
the council.
would like to clarify, because some questions were directly asked, what is the city going to gain in revenue in return? What is going to be the economic benefit to the town? And why shouldn't every other business or industry have equal rights to this sign? And I'd like to make sure that we're very clear. We don't feel entitled to be on this sign. We think anybody who should be on a sign like this is going to be an industry who is going to reciprocate to the city. And like I said before, we're going to do direct reciprocal advertising on 120,000 brochures that say, come back to downtown Placerville. So that's sort of and that's just step one. There's all kinds of other direct marketing we were going to do.
Thank you for that additional information. Is there any other member of the public wishing to address the council on this? I see no one else approaching the podium. I'll close public comment and bring it back for the councils to give direction to staff. Any questions we'll start with? Comments, suggestions? Dennis.
All right. I spent quite a bit of time thinking on this and considering a lot of the issues that people have brought up, including the Christmas trees, the breweries, and the like. And one of the things that I recognize with the winery industry is it is growing, and it is a major part of our agriculture here in this county. And as being a member of downtown for the last 30 years, I know that we have sought to partner with various entities that bring people into our community. And honestly, the winery is the first person that showed up and offered to do that. We have reached out to other entities, and they have taken a pass on it. And so the fact that a winery would like to partner with the downtown and the city of Placerville in promoting it and bringing people into it, people are going to go to the wineries anyway. It's what they do after they go to the wineries that make a difference. A winery industry is a year-round industry. It's not a segmented one time a year. So the benefits of having a winery affiliation with the wineries as a whole, I think, is a year-round event that occurs, and that we don't have with many other, whether it's Christmas trees, the skiing, the variety of those things do not do that. If you take a look at Murphy's, I believe that Murphy's still maintains its unique character as a town. It hasn't given way to becoming this winery industry. I think that it's a great partnership there, and Murphy's has really benefited from their affiliation and association with the wineries in that region. I don't see any wineries in the city of Murphys, but they do have a significant impact to their economy as being a partner with them. I liken this to I don't know if we all have kids, but if you have a kid and you have a second kid, you don't get rid of the first one, you love them both the same. And I think that our downtown is much like that. I think that that we can embrace our historic nature, our historic qualities that we have downtown, while also partnering with an organization such as the wineries. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think that it can bring a much added value to it. I think I'm going to leave it at that for now. Thank you.
All right, Dennis, thank you. Any other council member questions or comments?
A quick comment. I agree with Councilman Thomas. I kind of think of it too as, going to Paso Napa, where you have that synergy between the city itself and the wineries that are in the, adjacent areas, whether they're city limits or whether they're in the county lands. And again, historical towns, they have their own character. They haven't lost their character, even with wineries coming in to have tasting rooms in the city. I mean, I wouldn't mind to have tasting rooms here as well as people going out to enjoy the wineries as well. I don't think that would take away from anything. So I like the partnership. I think to the extent that we can, if there's others that want to step up later to partner with the city, I think that's something we can consider down the road, but I certainly see the wisdom, and I think it's a mutual benefit to both us and to the wineries in the area. We can have a discussion on what the sign, I think, actually looks like. That's fine, but at the core, I like the idea of having this.
Councilmember Taylor.
I'll comment on this. I appreciate everyone's concerns about changing the signs and where they're coming from. And with all due respect, I'm going to offer a different opinion. I'm in the restaurant business downtown. We enjoy tons of customers that come from wineries, and we really appreciate that. And I think that the winery customers are a natural complement to downtown with our boutiques and our art galleries and restaurants and hotels. It seems like a natural partnership, and one that would bring revenue to the city, not take away from it. I also think a lot of people drive by Placerville on their way up to Tahoe and don't know that anything's here. They don't realize that there's a really charming main street, and they don't realize that there's a wine country. So to have, an opportunity to let people know more of what's in the area, I think would be a good thing. That's my opinion.
Okay, so I am going to offer a different opinion. I am in total agreement with the idea of partnering with the wine country. I have nothing but admiration for all they've done and how they've established themselves, but I tend to agree with what Mr. Smith said. There's no wineries in Placerville. I do not think Placerville is wine country, and I think that added to our sign indicates that. I don't see how just that one El Dorado wine country is going to bring the connect. If I were in a car going by, that would not cause me to drive into Placerville. And I had the same opinion when they wanted to change. If anything, I would have agreed more to our downtown people when they wanted to put the events, changing event signs on that, than I would to this. And I voted against that too. I don't think that sign should be tampered with. It's welcome to Placerville, old Hangtown. And I know some people probably object to that too, but anyway, it is what it is. But I think there's another way. I think Placerville has, and I think the council, I think everybody has bent over backwards to try to partner with the wine country, with Apple Hill, with everybody. We welcome all that trade. The Christmas tree growers, Christmas time, I mean, every other car that goes by through town has got a Christmas tree. And I don't think we get them here by putting a sign up. They just know that we've got wonderful restaurants down here. We've got a lot to offer. And I just am against tampering with that sign. I talked to Mr. Morris yesterday about billboards, and he told me that we no longer have them in town. But there's some that are grandfathered in, and I just happened to be going on the freeway, and there's a billboard just above, where the grocery outlet is. It's on that. It's an old one, and it looks like it's been abandoned. But to me, I think the wine industry would have far greater advertisement on something like that than just these few words on our Welcome to Placerville sign. And that's where I stand. And again, absolutely not. I have nothing against the wine country. I love it. I think it's beautiful, but I just don't like that. I don't want to tamper with our Welcome to Placerville sign.
All right. Thank you for your comments, Patty. I'm going to go ahead and offer up a few observations myself. Thank you for everybody that spoke to the item this evening, and I appreciate the El Dorado Wine Association bringing this idea forward. I have been around long enough to have been through a few issues with this sign myself, and appreciate everybody's concern. You know, it's been noted that there's no winery in the city limits. There's also no Christmas tree farm. There's no apple orchards that are produced. There's none of those other industries either, but yet they're all an intricate part of what happens here. The Apple Hill Growers Association, that's a group of very dedicated farmers that are fighting Mother Nature every year to try and produce successful crops, and I can understand where it's difficult for them to do mass marketing, and they tend to be conservative, and I respect that. The wine industry continues to amaze me, how it flourishes. There seems to be no end to the number of gallons that need to be produced. There were some, my colleagues have named several very, I'll say luxurious or higher end communities that have done very well with relationships with the wine industry. The city that continues to astonish me is Lodi and what they've done with the wine industry. Of course, Lodi's wine industry goes back well into the 1860s and 1870s. Very, very, very old industry. It was once California's producing spot. Napa was a laughingstock, and that's certainly changed. So, the community of Lodi has leaps and bounds in the wine industry, and you'd think of them as just a little Central Valley town. Not the case. I think it's important for us to consider what's being proposed here this evening, and that is a serious marketing proposal that has been brought forward by the Wine Growers Association, or the El Dorado Winery Association. And I think that it would be important to ask them to go back and work with staff on developing what that marketing program would look like, so that we have clear connection as to what their benefits are going to be, and if this partnership continues to move forward. I would also like to hope that in today's age of computer generation that we could make some different renditions of the sign, and because there is some concern about, I do agree that is our welcome sign. That is it needs to continue to do that. I would really be open to finding ways to incorporate the El Dorado Winery Association's message, because I really do feel that we are the gateway to the wine industry. It has grown tremendously. Boger Winery is a few hundred feet outside the city limits, really. You go to the top of the hill and turn right. Mr. Driscoll probably knows how many feet it is to the driveway. It's not, but yet it's an open space that the city residents get to enjoy all year round. And the same can be said for all the rest of the wine into the vineyards, provide that safety for that land. So we're very close. Smith Flat, there's a huge investment in the Smith Flat area off of Jakeway Road. Millions of dollars have been invested in a winery operation there that's soon going to go public. Again, in our sphere of influence. So I think it would be very wise to direct staff to work further and bring back some additional renditions and some information as to what this marketing plan would look like. Or I'm open to any other suggestions, because I think, Cleve, what are you're looking for a recommendation? Or are we looking for specifics tonight on this, in this design?
That's kind of open. You had staff's recommendation that, similar to what you're saying, I think that perhaps there may be a different design that we felt might fit better with that. But we're open to council's recommendation. If you want to approve this, you could, or you could direct us to, or you could deny it at all as another option, or you could direct us to go back and work with them, as you're stating, to come up with something that maybe better fits, if I can put it that way. So.
What if somebody else, after this discussion, wants to participate?
Well, then we would consider that at that time.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Dennis? Comment?
I actually, when I don't know who's going to shoot me, but when I saw that sign, I actually thought it looked quite nice up there. The the welcome to Placerville still stands out as very dominant in the picture, and the El Dorado wine country is somewhat less than. So, it did look good to me. I'm open to changes, and I also think that with this, I'd like a better understanding of the relationship, and while we talk about it, I think the relationships in writing are important too. And so to know what that is, to do that with some clarity and make this decision with some clarity, I think is important. And I'll leave it at that.
Timeliness, did you have a sense on, did we need to have these discussions and bring it back to our next meeting? Or
I'm going to look at Lexi. I don't think that it has to be done tomorrow. I think there's a little bit of time for us to work on something, but I'll...
excuse me.
We're not on any type of time constraint, and I think we were hoping too that this is just to open a conversation about what the relationship could look like. What do you guys need? What do the businesses need? What do we need? What does that reciprocal marketing agreement look like? What's the font going to look like? What's the sign going to look like? All that can be just formed in discussion time and then come back and brought forth again. Yeah.
All right. Well, excellent. Thank you for that information. I would say we'd want to try and move this forward. I know the idea started last fall, and we've got this step out of the way. So, would someone like to make a? Do you want a motion?
I'll make
Clay?
a motion to direct staff to continue working on this, and I would like to see a couple different mock-ups of sign designs, and then kind of an outline of what that reciprocal marketing would look like.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Look forward to working with you in the near future. Good night, Brian. Good to see you. Thank you for your attendance. We're losing our audience. Kirk, thank you very much for all your work on the sign and everything else. I think I recognize a consultant out in the audience. All right. Thank you for good comments on that last time. 12.4, approve a contract change order and approve a budget liquidation and approve a budget appropriation. And I believe our city engineer will have this report.
Yes, sir.
Good evening again.
Good evening. The proposed item before you approves 2 construction contract change orders with Ciblon Reed Construction for the Sewer Lift Station Rehabilitation Phase 2 project, also known as the Madrone and Giovanni Lift Stations, and the related Measure H appropriation. This project was one of the originally funded Measure H projects and adopted in the 2002-2003 Capital Improvement Program budget. Council awarded the construction contract on February 13, 2018 to Ciblon Reed in the amount of $1,039,500, and construction of the project is currently underway. Contract change order number 1 was processed as an administrative no-cost change to address working days and start of construction, merely a formality to clean up some of the contract language. Contract change order number 2 is proposed to cover extra work that is associated with differing site conditions and substantial electrical modifications that were needed to the original design for both project sites. The costs associated with this change came to $92,291, which is an increase of 8.9% of the contract and within a normal 10% project contingency. At the time the construction contract was awarded, staff recommended a contingency of 10% to be appropriated at a later date. At the March 8, 2018 meeting, the Measure HL Sales Tax Committee recommended a budget liquidation from the Measure H Fund for the Cedar Ravine Pressure Regulating Station, along with the appropriation to the lift station project to fully fund the recommended project contingency. Construction for both project sites is estimated to conclude at the end of April, and staff's recommendations are summarized in the report before you this evening. That concludes my verbal report, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Questions for Rebecca? I had one. Why was the electrical suddenly increased by so much?
It was, there was a bit of an issue related to the panels. The panels and the way that the pump drew its source, the horsepower, it needed a little larger panel. So.
Okay, that explains it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, those are coming expensively. Questions for the staff? No, I'm going to open up to public comment on this item. This is 12.4, our loved and long overdue Giovanni lift station. We should have a song written about this thing by now. Good evening, Sue.
Good evening. Sue Rodman, current chairperson of the Measure HL Committee. The Madrone and Giovanni lift stations, true, were built in the 1970s. So they've more than surpassed their useful life service life. The rehabilitation of those were first approved as a CIP project in 2002-2003. They were on the Measure H list almost from the beginning, but with other emergencies and waiting to accumulate funding, they kept being pushed back. Finally, in December 2014, we got a consulting service agreement with Domicelli and Associates. It was supposed to be for design, service, and production of a complete bid package for both lift stations. The wisdom for doing these lift stations together was to take advantage of economies of scale by doing both of them, and consistency for parts and future maintenance. So in February 2018, we got a construction contract, and now, during actual construction, we find that the complete bid package is not so complete. Subsurface investigation discovered site conditions in the project plans and facility maps at both sewer lift stations are not accurate. Existing sewer main and sewer service alignments are not in the locations that were shown in the bid documents. They had to redesign the project layout to fit actual field conditions. And now in the middle of construction, we find that Giovanni Station actually requires installation of a temporary construction sewer bypass system, additional drainage improvements, and the installation of an additional manhole. Madrone Station needs 2 additional manholes, and substantial electrical modifications to the original design are required on both. I know Placerville's data, at the best, may not be up to date, but I am appalled that it is this bad. I would expect that a complete bid package should have discovered and accounted for actual field conditions. How much field work did Domicelli and Associates do? Did they go look at these lift stations? Did they get out of their trucks? Were these problems foreseeable? If so, I think Domicelli and Associates should pay the cost for their lack of knowledge of field conditions. Nothing beats boots on the ground.
Thank you for your comments, Sue. Any other member of the public wishing to address the council on 12.4? Seeing no one approach the podium, I'll close public comment at the end and bring it back to the council for action. I can appreciate what Sue's saying. You can sometimes tell when somebody does a job from the office off of bold prints. Yep. I tried to never do that. It always bit me when I ever tried. Council's desire. You know, this is amazing. This little project in our infancy, well before our current engineer got here, we thought we were going to do this for under $100,000, and now we're almost at $1.2 million, 1.1. This is, thank goodness we have no more of these. Please tell me we have no more of these.
We have one more.
But we won't. We now know how to make sure the bid package is correct.
Yeah. There was a couple of things actually. One comment I want to add in is that the addition of the sewer manholes was an add after the contract had already been awarded at the request of the Public Works Department, and the Engineering Department supported it. It made it a little bit easier to access those lines, and anything that we can do to make these stations easier to maintain for city staff is obviously a better choice, and that we felt it did add value to the project. Related to the spaghetti network of sewer lines that go in and out of the lift station, when it came time to open the lid, they absolutely did look and see which direction the pipes were coming in. Unfortunately, our facility maps that extended beyond those wet well locations, they diverted off in different directions. And and I say we in the collective sense, we did CCTV those systems. And, unfortunately, the ground markings differed in when we actually went to construction. But ultimately, that kind of stuff does happen. Utilities are difficult to find in the field, and we experience that on a regular basis. But as we do find these new facilities, we do update our facility maps immediately. So we understand the frustration, and we share that frustration. I will say that the redesign work that was included with Dominichelli was done at their own cost. They did not bill us for that.
That's good to know. Thank you for making sure that occurred.
Absolutely.
Any other comments, questions? Would someone like to make a motion on the item?
I would move that let's move 12.4.
Second.
Been moved by Councilmember Thomas, seconded by Councilmember Borelli. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Item 12.5, approve contract change order number 1, Pacific Street paving rehabilitation project, along with some budget appropriations. City engineer.
Good evening. The proposed item approves a construction contract change order with Doug Veerkamp General Engineering, and it will allow staff to issue the notice of completion for the work for the Pacific Street rehabilitation project from Clark Street to Cedar Ravine. This project was included in the current fiscal year's adopted 2018-2019 Capital Improvement Program budget, approved by Council on June 26, 2018, and is funded by the city's Measure L Sales Tax Initiative, adopted November 2016 by Placerville voters. City Council awarded a construction contract to Veerkamp just a mere 3 months after this project's approval, and construction began on October 22, 2018, and concluded on November 27, 2018. The original scope of work included replacement of seven water services suspected to be made of lead, along with a 3-inch grind and overlay of the full road width, reconstruction of accessible ramps at the Pacific Street Cedar Ravine Road intersection, and striping. On October 23rd, while removing the existing ramp, it was discovered that the Cedar Ravine box culvert at the intersection of Spring Street did not have a true top, but rather aluminum decking that supported nearly 8 inches of reinforced concrete. Feeling the flex of the panels under the work, the contractor felt uncomfortable proceeding until a solution was provided by the city. The engineering department was notified, assessed the condition, and concurred that the current aluminum panels were not sufficient in contributing to the support of the loading. In the interest of public health and safety, engineering staff designed an independently supported box culvert lid with cross bracing of the culvert to support the future sidewalk and ramp at the intersection. The following day, October 24th, while replacing the water services as part of the original contract, a leak at the corporation valve at the city's main was discovered. The service provided water to 596 Main Street, and as the contractor attempted to stop the leak, they were unsuccessful. City Public Works was called out to assist and was also unsuccessful at stopping the leak, and the valve ultimately failed, causing flooding at Pacific Street near Cedar Ravine Road. As luck would have it, the box culvert, which by now was fully exposed with its lack of lid, was actually able to capture the water from the corp stop failure. Otherwise, more substantial flooding of the area would have occurred. The total CCO for both the project impacts related to the box culvert and the failed corpse stop, as described, came to a not-to-exceed amount of $55,143.60. That total is supported by various budget appropriations and staff's recommendations and is summarized in the report. That concludes my verbal report, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Well, thank you very much, City Engineer Neves. I'm remembering those glorious days. Nick jumped in the trench, the valve let go, and he didn't need a shower. We plan our floods, though. We had the box culvert all ready to go to receive the water. Any questions for staff on 12.5? And I'm going to open public comment for the item. Any member of the public wish to address the council on this? Last little follow-up business on the Pacific Street project.
Sue Rodman, Measure L Fund, was funds are going to be used for to do this, and were used to do the Pacific Street project. We got really lucky. I have been afraid of that crosswalk in that area over Cedar Ravine Creek for years. I have expected to come by and see one of Veerkamp's trucks down in the creek, or a propane tank truck down in the creek. I have expected that thing to fail for a long time. So I am really glad we got there first. And I am grateful that we have an engineer who could get in there and design something that would work on the fly right then. So we have fantastic people working for this city, and we are very lucky to have them. And we are really lucky that we didn't have that thing collapse with a big truck on top of it.
Thank you for your...
Needless to say, Measure L said, yes, we should do this one.
Thank you very much for your comment, Sue. Any other member of the public wish to comment on this? Seeing no one else approaching, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the council for action. Someone like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion to adopt the resolution 1 through 4.
All right.
I'll second it.
Been moved, seconded by Councilmember Taylor. A roll call vote, please.
Mayor Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. This brings us on to item 12.6.
Mayor, I'm going to be recusing myself on this item as I have property in the location of this project.
All right, thank you very much. We will wait for you to leave the chamber. Councilmember Thomas is recusing himself because he is a property owner in the area of this next item. Item 12.6 is a continuing saga of the Broadway sidewalk project. We have two items before us this evening. Staff is asking for our approval on. Rebecca, could we have your report, please, on this next piece of the Broadway project?
Sure. The item before you proposes approval of amendment number 3 with REY Engineers to complete the hazardous waste study as required by Caltrans as the final technical study to meet the necessary environmental requirements. The Broadway Sidewalk Project proposes a gap closure to existing pedestrian facilities on Broadway from Mosquito Road to Schnell School Road to improve pedestrian safety within the Broadway corridor as a whole. A project exhibit has been included in the item packet, and an exhibit is also posted up in Town Hall directly behind Chief Ortega here. And this project is funded through the Highway Safety Improvement Program, so similar, actually same funding source as the prior item on Spring Street. On May 8th, 2018, Council awarded a consultant services agreement with REY for the environmental and design work associated with the project, and the proposed amendment and notice to proceed would bring their current contract value to $174,175. Federally funded projects generally take 6 to 8 years to complete, and the city will have this project completed within 2 years for our community. And that is attributed to the project team. Specifically, Melissa McConnell and REY Engineers have done an excellent job moving this project forward through the federal process. The tentative project schedule per staff's report cites final design concluding in May, bidding in August, and construction beginning in September. The community will be kept apprised of progress on the project as it approaches construction. Staff's recommendations are summarized in the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions from the council? Hearing none, I'll open public comment on this item. Any member of the public wish to address the council on item 12.6, the Broadway Sidewalk Improvement Project from Mosquito Road to Schnell School? Good evening again, Mr. Smith. Pull the microphone up. Thank you.
Mayor, if you could help me out, understand the difference between this and the Spring Street project. I understood that Spring Street had to do with a public nonprofit group, and this isn't. This is a commercial operation. If you're going to be dishing out that kind of money, I paid about, I don't know, $8,000 to do the same kind of design work for sidewalks. Are we going to do this for others? And why is it that we have this kind of grant for this project that allows money to be used for designing sidewalks when it's not done in other parts of the areas? It's just curious. It seems like not a good slope to go down.
See if we can get that clarified for you. Any other member of the public wishing to address the council? Seeing no one else approaching, I'll close public comment and bring it back and ask either city manager or our city engineer to address Mr. Smith's question regarding this design.
So as I
funding.
mentioned on the previous item related to Spring Street, the HSIP program functions on a set of criteria in order to become eligible. And it comes down to roadway classification and overall roadway prism project challenges, and one of the other items it comes down to oftentimes is accidents, particularly when you start asking for the larger amounts, which this project does. The Spring Street project was such a small ask that it was easier for the program to say, yeah, okay, we can do that. As far as Broadway sidewalks goes, unfortunately, we have had a fatality on Broadway, and that unfortunately weights application favorably. And so the question was, why here and why not other areas? You know, with this kind of funding source, which we always try to seek outside funding source and bring the funds into Placerville when the project meets the funding criteria. And this one did. Not every area does, but we will continue to look for possible avenues in the future of those areas.
Right, thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, if I could add to that.
Oh, certainly.
Rebecca, correct me if I'm wrong, but we do have funding that we have secured, I believe, for Placerville Drive to do some design work down there. And so it's not just one area that we're looking at. It may not be the same funding that we're looking for, but there is also other funding that we approach and try to look at for other areas.
Thank you. Yes, good memory. We also utilize other funding sources such as congestion mitigation air quality funds, which funds bike and pedestrian facilities as well as park and ride facilities. The city was successful in getting CMAQ funds in both the 2017 and 2019 El Dorado County Transportation Commission call for projects. We utilize the CMAQ funds also for the bike and pedestrian features over on Forney Road as part of Western Placerville Interchange. We also are using CMAQ funds on our Upper Broadway bike lanes and pedestrian connection project, and also for our upcoming Placerville Station Park and Bus project off of Mosquito Road to enhance those facilities. So there are other funding sources. We do, like I said, we do approach those funding sources and try to get them whenever we can for our city.
All right, thank you both for your answers. I've closed the public comment on this item. Is there a motion by the council regarding the item?
Move.
Second.
Seconded by
There was a tie.
Councilmember Taylor. I heard her. One good ear. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. And you know, this has been very time consuming. We've been working on Broadway in a couple of different ends. This is going to end out into a big improvement for that business district and hopefully continue to spur good things for it. All right. If someone would please ask Councilmember Thomas to come back into the room. Thank you. The chief pointed and you appeared. I like it. I like it. All right. 12.7. Approving a consulting agreement with REY Engineers for environmental and engineering design services for the Western Placerville Interchange Phase 2.2 eastbound on-ramp. The city engineer, Neves, please.
Thank you. This item before you proposes a contract with REY for the eastbound on-ramp. for the Western Placerville Interchange project. Back in January last year, the city submitted an application to the California Transportation Commission for the project through the local partnership program as the competitive funding source under Senate Bill 1, also known as the Road Repair and Accountability Act. In May of 2018, the CTC recommended and programmed $1,070,000 for the construction phase of the project. Following the programming of funds for the city was notified that delivery of the project, as it was presented in the application as a contract change order to the current Phase 2 construction contract, would not be allowed. The proposal of the CCO method delivery identified a substantial savings to the project cost. However, the city was later directed by the CTC that the project would need to be delivered as a standalone project through the design bid build method. Accepting the challenge and recognizing the value of the project, the El Dorado County Transportation Commission and Caltrans have partnered with the city to move forward with the delivery of the standalone project. At the August 2nd, 2018 Transportation Commission meeting, EDCTC programmed $200,000 in federal highway infrastructure program funds for the project. The Western Placerville Interchanges project is identified as an eligible project under the city's TIM program, and tonight's action includes appropriation of those funds to kick off the project on its already tight delivery schedule. Staff released a request for proposals in January and received one proposal from REY on the due date, February 6, 2019. Coincidentally, the proposal scored very high, and the team presented included several firms that the city has positive experiences working with and is very familiar with, including REY, Drake Hagelin, and Docken Engineering. Since that time, staff has been working with Caltrans Audits and Investigations to finalize the details of the contract and is now ready to move forward. As a side note, the contract requirements and regulations have been recently revised, and this contract is the first to successfully navigate those new policies and procedures with audits and investigations. So that's part of the reason for the delay in this, but we were very excited when we got the news. The consultant scope of work includes preliminary engineering, final design, right-of-way, bid support, and construction support. Prior to proceeding with recommending the contract, the city and REY met with the Phase 2 team and was also able to identify some cost savings given the overlap of the two projects. The fee was negotiated to the proposed not-to-exceed contract amount of $495,944 with a notice to proceed number 1 in the amount of $179,955. The tentative project schedule includes notice to proceed in April, design complete in December, CTC funding allocation at their January meeting, and started construction in spring of 2020. Staff will keep the council and the public apprised of any changes in this schedule. That concludes my report and the recommendations staff have presented this evening before you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. This is a very surprising, very important and exciting project. Questions for our city engineer on this item? I heard a microphone.
That was me. I appreciate the fact that REY Engineering stepped up and provided a bid. I know that we have worked with them a lot over the years, and I've really appreciated how you've showed up in our community and helped, kind of shepherd some of these projects through that had some more contentious issues. So I just want to express my appreciation for you guys being here today.
I just know that this was just a huge team effort, and I just want to express my gratitude to everybody that how they got together and figured this out so that we could complete this project. So.
Kara, did you have any questions for Rebecca?
No, I would echo that same sentiment.
All right. I had one question and maybe a comment. Is there any anticipated right-of-way? I know we'd want it in there as just in case, but we shouldn't have to go out and get anything from anybody.
You may recall council approved the contract with REY to acquire the survey and topo, and it appears that we do not need any right-of-way. Everything is contained either within city or state right-of-way.
That's excellent. And then I was going to challenge you. I noticed you have it scheduled already for the CTC meeting in January, which is most excellent. And then we wait until April 16th to advertise and bid. Why not advertise? Is there a 30-day delay with the CTC or something?
Primarily, it has to do with getting a construction management firm under contract.
Oh.
Yeah, you have, when the funds are allocated, you have 6 months to start spending them or issue a contract.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, too, is giving us enough time to get through the audits and investigations process. One of the primary reasons why the revisions have come along is agencies used to award contracts and then get approved through A&I.
Mm-hmm.
Now the policy is reversed. You have to have A&I blessing before you can award a contract, which seems counterintuitive considering how intimately involved we are with our own contracts. However, there has been some delay in getting through this process with them. They're very, very busy, but they're a great staff to work with. And so we go through the process.
So we do need that buffer.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it can be delivered sooner, we will certainly do that.
Very good. All right. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address the council on this item? It should be noted that our lone member of the audience has come forward. Good evening.
Still here. Jim Fisher with RUI Engineers. I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate some of the comments from council, and we've really enjoyed working in this community and really seeing a kind of a transformation in this community too over these last few years. It's refreshing to see how much work is getting done and how many improvements are being made, and I think that's a testament to the council and to city staff as well. So we have enjoyed it. We really like working with the team. It's a very intelligent, hardworking team, which I think complements kind of both sides very well, and we seem to have a very good working relationship. And to answer your question on right-of-way, I believe Caltrans had a Ray Lawyer Drive overcrossing project many years ago. When they built that, they actually built the bridge abutments far enough back to make room for this on-ramp, and they also acquired right-of-way at that time. So currently, it looks like there should be hopefully more than enough right-of-way to make these improvements. But thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate you staying till this late hour of the meeting, and certainly appreciate all the time that you've spent working and helping us move all these projects along. Is it someone like to make a motion?
I have.
Excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Bring it back to the council.
I have one question. And I'll make a motion. I forgot my list of all the acronyms. What is A&I?
A&I is audits and investigations.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, of course. And of course, we would swindle from them ourselves.
And I'd like to move items 12.7.
I'll second it.
Been moved by Councilmember Thomas and seconded by Councilmember Borelli. A roll call vote, please.
Mayor Acuna.
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Congratulations. This is a big step. Rebecca, isn't this a big step? This is a big step.
Yes, we're very excited. It's 9 o'clock and I've been up since about 3 a.m. and I'm actually excited right now.
This is good. This is good. And what's frustrating is I look at that eastbound ramp and it sits right next to the eastbound off ramp, but we're following the procedures. And that's very, very, very important. Okay, moving on to council reports from other agency meetings. The transit, or have we met? No, we meet next night. No. So transit, we haven't met. El Dorado Transportation Commission. All right, LAFCO, they meet, not this month. We don't meet till next month. So nothing going on there. SACOG, report, sir.
We did meet. I think the one thing I wanted to report out was in part of the funding that we approved on our consent calendar. Actually, on this one was for El Dorado Transit. We're going to get 4 new low floor buses. So that'll take the fleet from 6 to 10, so a significant increase. And those buses will serve Placerville, Pollock Pines, Diamond Springs, Cameron Park, and El Dorado Hills. So it's about a $1.2 million investment, I believe, that came through. So
Mindy's last act.
Yes, yes. So she was checking in with me as we went along. I said, nope, no problem. That one's sailing through. So I'm happy to report that out. Those will be much, much needed.
Well, thank you. That was happy news. 2x2, we are set to meet on April 1st, I believe. The afternoon of April 1st will be the next 2x2 meeting. Yep. Request for future agenda items. Any council member have a request for a future agenda item? Hearing anyone this evening. City manager and staff reports. Mr. Morris.
Just quickly, I should have probably done this at the beginning of the meeting, but I'm Mr. Rivas, if he would, please just comment on the parklet and what that is, just briefly, and the upcoming ribbon cutting that is scheduled.
Oh, yes.
Sure. Staff is very pleased to report on the parklet that I'm sure all of you are aware, and hopefully you've had the opportunity to visit and actually sit within the parklet and enjoy it. It was installed early Monday morning on the 18th. The parklet originated as part of a county health department grant, and it was a health grant where they're trying to promote healthful living and promoting people to be outside and pedestrian mobility and the like. And so they decided they wanted to put the demonstration parklet, is what we call it, within Placerville on Main Street. Because of all the restaurants and the activity that goes on, they felt that it would be an adjunct to activity, an additional place, a super bench, if you will, for people to sit. And there was a lot of debate, if you recall, those of you that were on the council, when we went through the whole process of approving the parklet project in concept. We looked at a few different locations, and this location was chosen mainly because of the overwhelming support by all of the business owners within the Creekside place. And in fact, I always enjoy going up to Timmy of Timmy's Brown Bag, and I ask him, where do you want the parklet? And he goes, I want it right there. So anyways, it is in. We're still waiting for sometime this week. The Solar Hut is going to install a solar array on that little canopy area, and they're going to put a little outlet so people can actually sit there with their cell phone or computer and recharge their equipment. We're going to do that, and then we're going to have a ribbon cutting ceremony is scheduled for April the 1st, and that's 9 o'clock. I encourage everyone to attend. Probably I want to just mention too that this was, and I'm trying to remember her last name, but she was a junior high school student who won a design contest. And so this was the winning design. It was Carter Kelly that actually constructed it with the assistance of Charlie Downs, who did a lot of the design work to get the specs for the materials and such. So the parklet is under a temporary use permit. It will be on Main Street through October 31st. And so hopefully it's a success, and the public will embrace it, and hopefully we'll see the parklet again in the future past that date. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Questions on the parklet? Appreciate the update.
Okay, quick question.
Kara,
Was it
go ahead.
October 31st or August 31st?
October.
October? Okay.
31st, yeah.
Will there be a lockout for the electrical on there during off hours?
Oh, we haven't discussed that, but we can do that. We did place a sign on the parklet. Smoking is not allowed within the parklet, and the hours are from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. and those are the open hours for the parklet. So it's closed beyond those hours in the evening. Hopefully that gives the PD the opportunity to enforce people that may want to say utilize the parklet for uses other than what it was intended.
Chief, can you comment on that?
So we discussed this because I try to, as I can, our department tries to foresee our issues. Right now, I asked our city attorney to review whether or not we can enforce that type of an ordinance at night. So I'm awaiting his research and discussion. But right now, we are not enforcing hours. If people are sitting there at 12 at midnight, we're not going to remove them. We don't have the authority to do that.
And just to follow up on the chief's comments, since he dropped it in my lap. That's all right.
Oh, by the way, John.
The problem is the Boise case that ruled that, you cannot prosecute someone who is homeless who sleeps in a public place. Now, there are certain limitations on that. You can develop health and safety reasons as to why they should not sleep in a particular location. You can prevent that, and you could probably have a restriction that you could prosecute under. But there still has to be a public place available. The parklet is a public place. And even though the city doesn't own it, the county does, it still makes it a gray area in terms of whether we could actually arrest somebody and have them prosecuted for being there after hours when we don't necessarily have a regulation that prevents that. But again, it begs the question about, can you prosecute someone who is homeless, truly homeless, and decides to sleep in a public place? It's an issue that the courts really haven't decided, and they haven't given us a lot of guidance on that particular issue. So we're kind of struggling with it. I'm trying to find some answers for the chief, and at this point, we're still working on it.
Any thought, because it's a temporary structure, that it might have a different, it's not like it's a sidewalk or something that's a permanent fixture of the street, that it would be a different classification?
I mean, it's a good distinction. I'm not sure it's got any teeth.
Legal
in it
merit.
yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, courts, the court made this ruling and basically said you cannot prosecute someone who's homeless for sleeping in a public place if there is no shelter available. That doesn't mean that if they don't have the funds or other, truly they have to be homeless and not have the funds. They really didn't say much else than that. We're not saying that you have to provide a home for them. We're not saying you have to do these certain things. You just can't prosecute them. So it just is this huge gray area right now.
Thank you.
Maybe we could throw a tarp over it. Exactly.
Well, more to come on that. Does that conclude your report, Mr. Rivas? I think it did.
Yes, unless any council members have questions.
I don't think there were. Thank you very much. Appreciate the update and all the effort. It's been a 2-year project since it was first conceived. So, Mr. Morris, are there any other staff reports or items that you would like to report to the council?
Just quickly, a reminder, we have our next goal-setting session, recall, on April 8th at 1 o'clock that we will be doing here at Town Hall. I hope Matt's going to tell me it's available that day. But I'll get back with him on that. I'm pretty sure we'll be okay that day, so I'll let you know.
Any upcoming items that you care to advertise?
We do have upcoming items. I promise you we will have a meeting on April 9th. We
Get an early
failed
quit.
in the agenda, so
All right. Well,
stay
I
tuned.
think what I probably should do then is adjourn us to our workshop meeting on April the 8th.
April 8th.
All right. Then I'll go ahead and close this meeting this evening, and we will adjourn to our April 8th council workshop and goal setting. Thank you and good night.